Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to GTSRL Season 35. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depends on what media you follow me on, and we're here today at Saint-Croix for another round of fantastic racing. 3 races, 11 drivers. Who's going to win at the end of each race distance? Well, only time will tell, as all of our drivers are currently getting ready to go once again. Now, of course, the story last time out was a mixed one, where currently sitting in the pits is Pies1123, who we'll just refer to as Pies from this point onwards. Pies being a driver who did very well in the opening round of Season 35 for EU Division 2, because we've moved away from EU Division 1 from yesterday. And looking at the middle league guys today, Pies currently sitting at the top of the drivers' standings for Division 2 with 48 points, having picked up 2 wins and also a second place, and picking up a win where it really did matter in the final race of round 1, where it's 50% more points on offer. Pies is sitting only 4.5 points ahead of his main rival in the championship at this point in time. That's EvBev, who's just left the circuit and headed off briefly, probably to reset some of his technology before coming back out. So we're going to skip over the second place driver for the time being in the standings, and then we'll head over to one Marky Marks, who's currently sat at trackside with the Porsche 962 C88, lovely machinery and lovely livery. Last time out, Marky Marks had a relatively good run, his best result of the evening being a second place in round 2, and currently sitting on 40 points. You can imagine that Marky Marks will be looking to really consolidate on what has been a successful campaign thus far. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry to announce that we have had the retirement from the season of our 4th place driver in the standings, a gentleman running under the name of Alpha Sick. Unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, Alpha Sick will not be participating anymore in this season. But of course, we wish him well, and hopefully he does return one day in a future season of GTSRL. So he's going to end his season campaign early on 38.5 points after picking up a good string of results. So then our next driver, who's currently running around, we believe at this time, although actually he's not here at the moment, would be FMM's Gomez 88. So waiting for Gomez to head out onto track, but Gomez currently sitting in P5 in the standings with 29 points, having picked up a reasonable set of results, but knowing that he can probably get a lot more as he goes into the rest of this season. And then we come down to the German driver of Robert Dimakiro from Germany, of course. Interesting time last time out, Rob being one of the strong drivers who you normally see up in EU Division 1, but find himself in an EU Division 2 as previously mentioned last time. Rob currently sitting on 28 points, only one off of Gomez in the battle for P5 in the standings, having a terrible round 1 we should point out, coming in with only 2 points out of race 1 in round 1. But then starting to build a lot of momentum in the following races. In race 2, he was able to pick up 8 points, and then in race 3, picking up 18 points for what was a very hard-earned 3rd place. Now, outside of these guys, of course, we've got Erlefan, who is heading around at this point in time, we believe. We're just going to wait and see who else. In fact, we've just had a Gomez turn up, we're hearing, so we're going to wait for Gomez to get out on the circuit before we take a look at his car. But in the meantime, I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good second day in your week as we get a little bit closer to Christmas with each and every day. And I wonder what Santa's got in store for our guys today in terms of early presents and good results. But Erlefan, also known as Peachy Erla. So Peachy, the Finnish driver, running around at the moment in 962C as well. Last time out, had a reasonable run of results, best result being in race number 1, picking up 10 points for what was a P5. And then things falling off a little bit for Peachy as he went deeper and deeper into the night's running. So Peachy currently sitting in P7 in the standings with 26 points. And then we come across to Zenq, the driver from Poland, also running out in the rather amply themed Padaru 962C 1988. Zenq, last time out, picking up 25.5 points. Not having a bad set of results, his most notable result being a surprise P3, one could argue, in the second race of round 1. A really hard-earned result, and we know Zenq is a very fast driver, but sometimes just beset with a little bit of troubles in terms of mistakes, which can see him drop down the pack, or just not quite get the results that he was perhaps hoping for. But you can imagine that Zenq is going to have to try and iron those out tonight and push his way up the field. Now we have also got our good friend Stanley, who's currently running around in the 962C machinery as well. From the Netherlands, Stan currently sitting in P9 in the standings with 23.5 points, having his best result in race number 1 with 9 points being accrued for what was, if we remember correctly, a P6. But then it did go a little bit downhill for Stanley, although he did redeem himself to an extent in the final race in round 1. But we're looking to get a better set of results here, because we know Stan's got a lot of potential, but hopefully he can just iron out the mistakes that seem to follow him wherever he goes. Then coming to P10, we have Dr. Otterface, who I'm not sure. Yep, we have got Otterface out on the circuit, also running in the 962 machinery. The British driver here, running in the Wangelborg liveried machine, which many of you will know is a running meme within GT Sport, and I believe it's associated with Jimmy Broadbent. But he's got a total points tally at the moment of P10 in the championship of 20.5. Having a good result in round 3 in race 3 in particular last time out, but not seemingly to get it all together in race 2, coming home with only 2 points, which was a very difficult race for us to face. But we know he's got a lot of motivation to do well here, and will be looking to try and get a few more points on the board and see some opportunities. Then in terms of P11 in the standings, we have got one Feel the Vibes, who is currently running around on circuit through turn 11 in the Martini liveried 962. A lot of our drivers going for the 962 once again, so we'll talk a little bit about the machines that are being run shortly. But Johnny sitting on 18 points, or Feel the Vibes sitting in 18 points in the standings at the moment, so sitting in P11, and didn't have the best set of results, but consistent results in round number 1, and we'll be hoping that he can make his way a little bit further up the field tonight. Now, we also need to announce that Colm MD will not be racing tonight. Colm was not able to attend due to personal circumstances, but we are potentially expecting a return of Colm into round 3, so next week when we head to Circuit de la Sarthe. So we'll wait to find out whether Colm will be back then. But otherwise, the only other driver we need to introduce in running down the order right now would be one, if we can find him, if he's in our roster at the moment. Doesn't appear to be in our roster, and that is Explosive, or Explosive Fireball. Now, Explosive, we will come back to in a little bit then, because I believe he is in the lobby right now, but he's just not out on circuit. But taking a look at the machinery, yeah, Explosive Fireballs is waiting to get out on circuit. They're just prepping the car in the paddock. You can see that all of our drivers here have gone for the 962C 1988. It seems to be the car that is running overall the best in terms of all the Group C machines available. So we are heading into a bit of a one-make series now with regards to round number 2, which is a bit unfortunate, but still. One has to imagine that whereas it's going to be a one-make series, this is going to be even more about what can our drivers do in terms of getting the best tune out of the car, and then just having the strongest overall run around the circuit. And it will really come down to what each individual can achieve now, rather than the strengths and weaknesses of each respective car. Heading back out to the circuit then, we're just going to introduce a couple more drivers who have recently shown up. So we're going to introduce our good Irishman here, Evbev, who is running around at the moment, just getting a little bit warmed up. So Evbev, last time out, had a very good set of results and really was competing with Pies and Marky Marks for the podium in most instances, and trying to head to that top step, of course. Sitting on 43.5 points in second place in the championship, so only 4.5 off of Pies. Evbev had a win in race number 1, but then the results started to slope off a little bit with a P5 in what was race number 2, and then in race number 3 picking up those 19.5 points for what was a rather respectable run to second place in race number 3. So Evbev will be trying to achieve at least one more win, I reckon, as he goes into tonight's races, no doubt. And the only other driver who we are still waiting to pop out on the circuit, I believe, is Explosive Fireball, but I get the feeling he'll be heading out right at the last moment. He's not out on the circuit. So, what we got to think about tonight then? Well, the key thing really here is in terms of, we saw last time out, so in terms of EU Division 1 around the circuit, so last night we saw that the big contention points around here were not just in the second half of the circuit, where the majority of the overtaking really did seem to kick off, particularly with the turn 14 hairpin, which Vibes is just going through now, but also there seemed to be this disparity between drivers who were very strong in the opening half of the circuit, so sectors 1 through to 3, and then drivers who seemed to fall off the pace in sectors 1 to 3, but really gained dramatically in the second half of the lap, so sectors 4 through to 6. as we can see coming across the bridge right now. We've got Vibes making his way into Sector 5, the very low speed chicane with the tarpaulin apex, and then watching out for the race curve through the second half of the chicane there, turn number 17, which did lead to a number of drivers bouncing over it and picking up time penalties, alternatively going into that very dangerous wall on the exit of turn number 17. Now as Vibes coming around to complete the lap, then moving on to the final sector, which consists of only 2 corners, 19 and 20, but 2 very challenging corners, particularly 19 because of how much momentum you carry out of turn number carry out of turn 18 and into 19, and you've got to try and get that all keyed up. It's going to be one, I think, whereby we could be seeing a change of the order here. From catching up with Pies prior to going into this one, we had the opportunity to have a brief catch up with the Brit as he was walking his way to his car in the paddock. Pies was saying that whilst he had a very good set of results in round number 1, he gets the feeling that other drivers are going to be significantly stronger here. Not poo-pooing, of course, his own chances tonight, but still in that mental state of knowing that the job's not done and he's still got work to do in order to be able to pull off the overall win in Season 35 for EU Division 2. We know Pies is a very strong driver, however, so you can imagine whatever challenge is thrown his way, he is going to rise to the challenge. Now we have got Vincent Summer charging around at the moment. We haven't talked about Vincent actually, that is a very good point. So we do need to introduce Vincent once again. So Vincent Sim or Vincent Summer, in terms of the standings right now, we do not have Vincent in our standings. I believe as a result, Vincent may be sitting on 0 points as it currently stands. Yep, so Vincent was the only driver who could not take part last time out in round number 1, but what you can see is here he's running quite a memorable livery. I believe this is a reference to the Lister V12, which was a car that arrived in Gran Turismo 2 and was not the best of cars in all honesty, and it became a bit of a meme as he's running very similar colours to that car, but I'm assuming that is correct. But still, we wonder how well Vincent can do, and of course he's debuting tonight for Season 35, so there's going to be some big questions to ask of the Dutchman as he charges around the circuit. But we've also got Marky Marks and Stan Lee here, both coming through turn 15 right now. A corner that did catch out a number of drivers, particularly those who went for moves on the inside, but then realised that they actually had to brake a bit earlier than the standard braking point for the, outside to inside line, where they're taking an inside to outside line, simply because the apex is over a road surface change and it's uphill as well, which means you carry a lot more momentum as Stan Lee buries it into the wall there, going into the chicane. Was NQ Meister just parked at turn number 1, probably cooling his heels at this point and thinking to himself he's got a good amount of practice in and just wants to take a brief breather. And of course that's fair enough, with 3 minutes to go before we get start checks underway. So we're just going to ride a little bit with Ev here as he's charging around the circuit, making his way through turn 14 and going a bit wide there. And you can see what our drivers are doing as they're going through the corners now and getting in their final warm-up laps. They are experimenting effectively with what is possible through the corners. And you can imagine in terms of that tuning, one thing we did note from a number of our drivers is that they tuned their 962s to essentially have a very long second gear and then make third gear quite a punchy gear in terms of acceleration, and then they extended fourth gear. And that was to make it so that going through the first half of the circuit, they could use second and third gear to deliver all of the turning force through the corners, these 90-degree corners that dominate the first half of the circuit, of course, turn 1 and turn 3 being just 2 examples of many. And then when they've got that longer fourth gear, which extends up into fifth gear eventually, and we can see Vibes is now in fifth gear here, it's only really down this one very long straight that fifth gear really starts to build a massive effect. It does also on the bridge to a lesser extent, but it's really the run down into 12 and 13 where fifth gear was important. But otherwise, it's having second through to fourth configured correctly, which really makes the difference here as Vibes slides out to 14. Just getting a little bit too aggressive there on the power, and I get the feeling as Otterface takes emergency manoeuvres to watch out for the fellow British driver that it's going to be a case of our drivers getting used to the fact their cars are going to feel a bit unstable across the road surfaces and trying to get that tune perfected once they've got the time available to see what exactly they can extract out the car in terms of phenomenal lap time. Now they're both coming down here, and I think they're also getting a little bit of practice of running side by side or trying to attack one another into the corners, which you are legally allowed to do, of course, as we're just going through the practice stage right now. As long as there's not too much bullying or knocking about on track, nobody's going to mind. Our stewards are quite lenient at this point in the race night. And it's a nice early time in the morning at the French circuit. I believe it's 7:10 in the morning, so we've got a nice sunrise coming in. But of course, that will obscure some of our driver's vision going into certain corners. Turn number 1, for example, the low sun layer can effectively make it difficult to see where the apex curb is, or the apex tarpaulin, because there's no actual curb there. It's just a tarpaulin road surface. as we can see both drivers come through here, and Vibes exploiting this as an opportunity, I think, to get used to running in the dirty air of another car, especially with the weak slipstream setting, meaning that the slipstream is going to 2.5 seconds back as he comes into turn 1 then, and you can see that low sun just running over the circuit and obscuring the driver's vision a little bit, assuming that he's running with a cockpit camera, alternatively with a nose camera as we're doing right now, running on the bumper of the car, and he's getting that feel for running that dirty air. As you can see, it's still affecting him as he goes through 3, but nailing 3 very nicely there, and I think Vibes is really starting to feel the vibes of running around this circuit, if you'll excuse the pun, as he just about misses running off out of 4 and now up into 5. And welcome to those of you who have just joined. So just taking a look through the chat, we've got 1D31 who had some phenomenal results yesterday evening. Congratulations to you, D. I know it didn't go too well towards the end, but still you had a great set of runs, and hopefully we'll get to see even more fantastic stuff from you in round 3 next week. We've also got Temptation 79, and we've also got Rob Dubakiro. Good evening to you, Rob, and of good luck tonight, of course, in your races as you run out on the circuit. We've got Zeronic. Good evening, Zeronic, as always. And I think that's everybody in the chat so far who's put a message in, but I'm sure there's plenty more of you there. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi. Indeed it did, D. Your first lap pit stop almost worked. It was just unfortunate how things eventually played out, but again, it shows the potential that you've got in terms of both yourself as a driver and the machine at your heels, and I can imagine you're going to be going for those podiums in the finale. But yeah, we're just counting down right now. I think start checks are going to be underway any moment now, to be honest with you, because we have just gone past 7:45 our time. That is GMT UTC. I'm just waiting to hear some correspondence from the head steward, who tonight will be Pies. He is the head steward of tonight's racing. And all of our drivers just gradually reporting in at the moment. But we're not getting any announcements so far in terms of when we're going to be getting the start check underway. There might be a slight delay here because some of our drivers are reporting some strangeness in terms of lobby, in terms of connections, but we will of course find out. And actually one driver who we can introduce, because we haven't introduced him yet, as he runs wide into 18, is Portugal's Gomez here, Gomez 88. Now Gomez, the last time out of course, had a good set of results, coming into P5 in the standings currently with 29 points. His best result last time out being a 6th place, I believe, in race number 2, picking up 9 points there. And you can imagine that Gomez tonight will try to better that and creep into the top 5 over at least one race distance. Now, to give you a quick reminder of the races that we have tonight, we've got 3 races for you. We've got 2 sprint races consisting of 4 laps, and then we've got a much longer race of 7 laps, an endurance race with a mandatory pit stop. All of our drivers are expected to use racing medium tyres, of course, not allowed to change off of that compound onto a different compound, but in the pit stop race they can choose to change tyres if they so desire when they come into the pits, but it's not mandated. And it is worth noting that we did see in the 3rd race last time that going for a fresh set of tyres can work if you've got an overall pace advantage on your opponent by default, i.e. in terms of your respective fastest laps. But if you're equal pace with your opponent and you put tyres on in the pits versus them not putting tyres on in the pits, it means you've got quite a deficit to make up for, and it may not work out. So it's going to be a challenge for our drivers to know whether they should go for the fresh rubber when they're going for the pits. If they're going to do so, I suspect it will probably be drivers who pit on lap 3 or lap 4 of the 7-lap race, simply because then in the midpoint they've got fresher tyres and they can go once more. Whereas drivers who stay on the same set of tyres, we saw that towards 6 and 7, in terms of the laps, that's when the tyres really started to fall off the cliff. And welcome to Jerry Racecar Driver. Good evening to you, sir. And we are about to get underway then with our first start check, which is good news. And whilst we're waiting for this start check to get underway, we're going to take a quick sip of water, and this is a good time. You've got approximately 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, to go and get yourself a bit of popcorn or a little bit of food, alternatively a drink, and settle down for a night of excitement. You can see the lights above our drivers on the front row all going green then, and they're going to be launching off. And this is a good opportunity, of course, for our drivers to practice those initial race starts. And also we can get an idea of how our drivers have tuned their first and second gears here in the rundown to turn one. And we can see that Vibes in particular had a very strong start there on this opening start check. And I think that Vibes has got a really good feel for just getting that initial launch. And Pies may have bogged down, but he has pulled ahead of everybody now. Apart from, of course, what was Vibes at the time. As they all come off the circuit then, and that is start check number 1, and everybody was able to pull away. Although we do have FBev who seems to have pulled out of the lobby. In fact, no, my apologies, FBev did get stuck on the grid, so he's going to do a quick restart here and see if he's able to pull off in the next start check. But whilst we're waiting, of course, all of our drivers will be getting that little itch, that little temptation, as we also have Gomez come out of the lobby. I'm wondering what's happened there to Gomez. And Gomez has returned, so he's done a very quick restart. In terms of liveries, we've got Explosive Fireballs, who we did not introduce actually, and now we'll introduce him running around in the Benson Hedges Jordan livery. That's a hark back to the Formula 1 days when Eddie Jordan ran the team, of course, in Formula 1. So, last time out in terms of Explosive Fireball, currently sitting last in our standings, well, minus, of course, Vincent Summer, who did not take part in round number 1. So you could say Explosive Fireball is in the second to last place, sitting with 10.5 points. His best result, really, well, he had the same result every time out in terms of picking up 3 points every time. So Explosive did not have the best of races, albeit you can imagine Explosive will be looking to do a bit better today. The British driver will try to make his way up the field and gain a few more points here. And welcome to Driving Dutchman in the chat as well. Hope you're doing well. Now, in terms of the team standings, whilst we're waiting around for another start check to occur, currently it is Pies and Gomez who form team number 6, who are leading in the team standings with 77 points. Although it is quite close in the fact that team number 7, who are in second at the moment, so that's Stanley 15, and FBev, they're currently sitting on 67 points, so only 10 points down, and a single race evening can really change that. We have a huge number of points up on offer, of course. If you add it all together, you can imagine that is 2 times 14 plus 21, so that's 28 plus 49. So you've got 49 points if you're able to pick up every single win as the lead driver in the team. And then if you're able to come second as the second driver in the team, well, that's a further 26 plus what would be 19.5 points. So that'll get you up to what would be 35.5. So that's 35.5 plus 49. Well, your team's going to be looking at a rather chunky points there. I think that's 84.5 points that you can get overall from a single race evening. So that's why it's good to go for gold and try and get every single point, because that's a huge points haul that is available to you. We're really just waiting right now. It's a lovely livery, and of course, whilst we're waiting for the next start check, let's talk a little bit about the liveries. So we've already talked about Vincent Simmer's Lister style livery, which I think really is my favourite so far, just simply because it's bringing back a really old Gran Turismo livery. And then we have got Stan Lee with his infamous livery choices, of course. Stan Lee becoming a bit of a livery creator for the GTSRL community, with a huge variety of liveries coming out quite recently. The Dutchman, of course, being somebody who you might want to add to your friends list or send a friend request if you do want a custom livery made. And then we've got Dr. Otterface running around in the Wangelborg livery. Quite a nice one, very subtle if I'm honest with you, sponsored by Honk on the front of the car. Can't help but giggle at that one for certain intentions. And then we've got Rob coming through right now, and as Rob comes charging down here, we're just going to get a good look at his livery, of course. Running in the SAS livery, the SAS Racing Room one. A nice, rather good combination of colours there, white on a blue on an orange. And then Marky Mark's also coming down to turn number 1 at this point in the camel livery. Again, a very nice one, a very distinct one in that you can definitely tell that it's Marky Marks' car. And then we've got Piers, who's currently sat there, feeling a bit shy perhaps in, I think, what's a bit of a black or at least dark green and yellow livery there. Although I think Piers is a bit camera shy because he only wants to show his front wheel and his front right headlight. Then Feel the Vibes right now, just parked up just outside of the paddock, running around to that Martini livery with the grey-black background. And we just had FBev rejoin. We've got ZenQ with the Padaru livery, of course, because it is Christmas. Well, we're coming up to Christmas. It's not quite Christmas yet. And Peachy coming across the bridge right now in a rather distinctive, I believe, purple and blue livery. There we go. Coming through with the Tool logo on the side of it. And that's everybody covered. So really, we're just waiting for start check number 2 now, as FBev is gradually rejoining. As he's coming out of turn 19 and in the rundown now to the final corner, and we've got FBev returning to the circuit. So welcome back to FBev, of course, the Irish driver here, choosing to run in a very similar livery to his teammate Stan Lee, albeit a blue one rather than a green one. So we're going to be getting underway with another start check right now. The hope is this time, of course, that all of our drivers are able to pull away and there's no funkiness in terms of anybody getting stuck or latency. And this time Piers is going to get a feel of what it's like to start right at the back. It could be good experience because you never know what could happen over the race distance, and you might need to try and gain a couple of places on the opening lap, particularly the opening sector. So it's the lights out and away they go once again for the second stuck check, and it looks as though we do have a driver who is stuck on the grid, and this time it is Gomez who's stuck. Quite interesting, because we did not have that happen last time out, I don't think. But Gomez is stuck, so he's going to have to try going again. We'll probably have to disconnect and reconnect to the lobby. All our drivers making it through relatively safely this time through turn 1. A little bit of a push wide for one driver who we saw in the corner of the camera shot, but otherwise everybody's made it safely through, bar Gomez, who has not been able to get off the grid. And welcome to Vitor Knight, who I can see in chat. A strong supporter of Gomez, the conquistador for the podium. I do like that, there's a little jingle to it. I say, every driver here tonight bringing out a 962C. I get the feeling if it was going to happen at a circuit in terms of it becoming literally a one-make series, then this would be the circuit where that happens, because this circuit has that crisscross in terms of different sectors. Could you argue that the circuit used for round number 1, so Autodrome Largo Maggiore GP circuit, had that? Not quite, because the straights were not as dominant in terms of parts of the circuit. You did have the run down of Big Banky Boy, of course, back then, but that was the only really noticeable straight where cars were able to get up into top gear and really use top gear, whereas here we have got that very long run out of 11 into 12, which starts the second half of the circuit, and that's where these cars will be able to use that balanced all-round nature of the Porsche, whereas you might want to go for a more straight line speed dominant car such as the Nissan R92C when we go to Circuit de la Sarthe. But Gomez has just left the room and will be rejoining shortly, and we'll be doing one more start check as a minimum. We're just going to stay with Peachy right now as he's making his way through the high-speed chicane here. Nailing it relatively well there. Car getting a little bit sketchy on initial impact of the curb for turn 13. They're coming down into 14 right now. You can see really hooking up, just grazing the inside wall there. He'll be conscious of that and he'll put that in his memory. As we saw at the rear of your shot there, 2 drivers getting very close. So that was Explosive and 1 other driver. I think, I'm not sure that was Feel the Vibes in the rear of the shot. It was Feel the Vibes as Explosive Fireball takes a little trip off the side of the circuit out of 15. Really following Peachy through right now. He'll need to tighten up that braking point into the low speed chicane. You can see he's going wide of apex, and that is costing him in the region of about 3/10 of missing the apex. And now coming through 18, of course, going wide there initially as Gomez rejoins. And you'll just have to excuse me for a second, folks. Sorry about that. Just had to sneeze off microphone. Don't want to absolutely deafen you with a sneeze. And Peachy coming across the line now, so let's jump away from Peachy and give another driver the time of day in the camera spotlight. As Pies is still waiting to get out there. Very camera shy Pies tonight, that's understandable. As Rob is now coming out of turn number 10 and into 11 here. We're going to ride on board with the German driver here, absolutely hammering it around the circuit. Qualifying will be 12 minutes long for those wondering. It is due to kick off within the next 2 to 5 minutes. So 12 minutes long, and we're about to do the final start check, I believe, or at least one more retry. But I suspect what will happen if this start check does not work out, there may be one final start check, and if anybody else is stuck, then we'll try to enter them into the race right at the back, but otherwise that driver may have to take a retirement for tonight. So we get that nice view of all of our drivers on the starting grid, of course. And in fact, let's give you an idea of what it's like to start right in the middle of the pack this time. So you can imagine starting on board with Explosive Fireballs here, waiting for those lights to go out. And he's going to absolutely nail it in terms of the start. In fact, he gets a lot of wheel spin off the rear wheels there. And, well, sends the car very sideways and causes a bit of a 3-car pile-up there. But everybody, the good news is everybody was able to pull off the grid. So that is good news with regards to the fact we did have one driver get stuck, but that was wheel spin stuck, not GT Sport bug stuck. So everybody is looking as though they're good to go for qualifying in the next couple of minutes. So they're all going to come out of the circuit now in order to end the mock race. And I think then we're going to get an announcement that qualifying will be good to go. We're still waiting to hear from race control whether it will be qualifying that's coming up immediately next, or whether there is going to be one more start check. Start check. But Stanley's now heading out onto circuit. We're just going to ride on board with the Dutchman here as he's coming into turn number 3, braking hard down from 5th gear, slamming it down to 3rd gear there, and actually really nailing that apex, but then going wide and going off onto the grass and doing a 360 before rejoining the racing line in a rather fashionable manner there. So Stanley getting some bonus points, which unfortunately won't count towards his position in the championship standings, but he does get some bonus points in terms of fan points. As Gomez is making his way through 7 now and coming over the straight now, over a little hill and running down towards 8 here, chasing after Vincent Simmer. Before throwing it through turn number 8 and now through 9 and up into 10. I think all of our drivers here really are looking good to go. So we're going to have 12 drivers out on circuit. really we're just waiting now for any announcement that qualifying is underway or about to get underway. Since there's just been a little bit of clarification within the rules. Okay, we have got one driver who's just quit out, that's Zenku Meister. But we've just been told that qualifying is going to come up after one more start check effectively now. So qualifying is going to be underway within the next couple of minutes. And Zenku has rejoined, but we will be doing the one more start check, which is by default. Really, we are just waiting now, and you can see we've got the white pit entry line there, the solid line, and there's just been a clarification in the rules where it becomes a dashed line upon exit. Our drivers are allowed to run over that. You couldn't really see it in the camera shot there because we were too low to the road surface and on the opposite side of the track. We just had clarification that you can drive across the dashed white pit exit line, just not the solid one, as is standard in terms of motorsport ruling. Okay, so we've got one final start check, and then quali is going to be kicking off straight away. So that's good news, because I think, well, I'm definitely getting itching to see what our drivers can do, and I'm sure you guys and girls watching in right now are, and our drivers even more so, probably absolutely chomping at the bit right now. That's one of the things as well. You've got to imagine that right now all of our drivers have been sat around effectively doing some practice laps for the last 35 to 36 minutes, but they've all been waiting patiently to actually start converting those laps into qualifying laps and to get racing underway. So they're all going to be very eager, and they'll probably start to get a little more competitive as they do this final start check and this practice start, because they'll all want to get a feel for rubbing up against one another and racing away. As we can see, Marky Marks decides to put reverse gear on there, and I think that's just been as a little bit of a laugh there, but I think some of our drivers may have found that not as funny, but that was quite comical to see him put it in reverse and roll backwards initially. But everybody was able to get away that time, so that is good news. And really, we are on course then, ladies and gentlemen, for the qualifying session. 12 minutes, who will come out on top? Now remember, the pole lap last time out in terms of EU Division 1 was, if I remember correctly, a 2:31.0. Correct me on that, if somebody can in the chat. But we are going to be getting underway qualifying. I suspect we are going to see quite a comfortable time from one of our drivers. Probably looking at a 2:33 or 2:34 for pole. But qualifying is underway. Our stewards have told them it is go, go, go. So we are going to be watching on track and seeing what our drivers can get up to. If anything right now, I don't think anybody's actually running out on circuit. In fact, no, we have got the pit glitch, I believe, where all of our drivers are stuck and cannot get out the pits. Oh, we've got one driver who's made it out. We have got the pit bug, so nobody's going to actually be able to get out of the pits. So it's going from bad to worse tonight in terms of actually being able to do any racing. So we're just waiting for clarification as to what's going to happen here, because a number of our drivers have not actually been able to go around on circuit, although a number of them have got out of the pits now. And in fact, our lead driver in terms of running around, I'm going to assume that qualifying still stands, i.e. that we are in the qualifying session at the moment, albeit that has cost all of our drivers a bit of time being stuck in the pits. We have got Marky Marks currently running around, and he's the lead driver of the pack, so we are going to stay with the British driver here. As he makes his way round with the racing medium tyres on. Good warm-up lap really by Marky Marks here, and what you can imagine is I think what he's trying to do is get himself away from everyone. He will not be burning fuel, of course, as a result, as he's actually, you can note there, he's tuned 5th gear to be as he cuts across 13, and he will pick up a time penalty and some dirt on the tyres. Of course, this is an out lap, so he can burn off that dirt off the tyres as he goes very deep into 14. That's that dirt causing the brakes to lock up and the car to drift off. But what you can imagine with Marky Marks here is he's given himself a huge amount of space because he's running around and he's not really making any effort to burn fuel out the car. So it gives him ample opportunity on track not to feel any pressure off of anyone. But of course, the return of that, the flip side of the coin, is that unfortunately for him, it means he'll carry more fuel and therefore he will theoretically be a bit slower on the straights. But what we saw there in the rundown into 12, which was interesting, is he's actually tuned his 5th gear to be quite short. I.e. his top gear is all for acceleration and not for top speed, because he was maxing out at approximately 196 miles an hour before the braking zone. Other drivers will be looking to try and make their way up to 200 there, but Marky Marks, that's interesting, and we're doing another stuck check. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we have cancelled qualifying and we have got another stuck check. Very sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. We're still waiting to get underway. And we can see everybody has been able to pull off safely, so we should not be expecting any further stuck checks. It should just be qualifying after this one. So we're just going to hop out and, well, I think we're going to get the announcement from Pies that this will be qualifying go and get, unless we get another pit bug. But even then, I'll wait for declaration from our Master Steward here. Okay, qualifying is underway once again, so hopefully everybody can get out this time. We're just going to wait for some of our drivers to take to the circuit, and our drivers are all pouring out. So we are finally underway with qualifying, folks. Sorry for it being a bit late on your programme. And we can see Phoenixon. Good evening to you. But everybody is now out on the circuit running around. We've got one driver currently sat in the pits, but I think they're probably doing that just simply to give themselves some space as Pies decides to make a visit and kiss the outer wall on the exit of 3. But we can see that all of our drivers now, I think, a bit of seeing red and a bit of a rush of blood to the head as Pies gets it all sorts of wrong once again, coming out of 4. Anyway, he's going to drop down a little bit here in terms of the qualifying session, but everybody is charging round right now, no hesitation whatsoever, and just simply charging out there. We do have one driver still in the pits, that is Picciola, who's currently sat in the pits and waiting. I think he's just giving himself a bit of time. He might just be taking a breather and letting everybody else get out on circuit, but everybody's charging around here as if there's no time left in qualifying, but they have got a full 12 minutes and they will need to be wary of that. Alternatively, I think what we'll start to see shortly is that drivers will start to stamp on the brakes and just give themselves a little bit further space out on track. But the head of our group of drivers running around right now is Vincent Simmer, who is running around in the Lister V12 livery. Coming down into turn number 12 then. Let's see what speed he maxes out at right now. Maxing out at about 198 once again. I think a number of our drivers here have gone for a tune where they're maxing out in 5th gear at the end of that straight at about 198. We're not seeing anyone get any higher than that. So it seems to be the optimum top speed into 12 as Vincent makes a very, very costly mistake in terms of giving himself space on track by braking too heavily into 14 and too late, we should point out. So locking up and running off. And he's got FF right behind him here. And I think really in this sequence, as we can see that much further down, we've got Rob and also Peachy going around right now at a very gentle pace and just warming up their tyres and getting a feel for the circuit. We're going to have a very long train of cars coming down into the final sector, and I'm wondering whether some of our drivers right now will be thinking about stamping on the brakes and giving themselves some breathing room, because remember, we've got a 2.5 second slipstream window. A number of our drivers right now running around like this will be picking up distant toes, and there may be some reports to the stewards immediately as qualifying is meant to be without the distant toe. But again, The more the merrier, I say, when we're seeing a lot of cars challenge around on the circuit, and of course we want to see them go at full speed. Now, is Evbev going to back off a little bit here just to give himself some breathing room in case Vincent makes a mistake? Well, it looks as though he's got about a 3-second gap at most to Vincent right now, but it's very close, and I think he will be pretty much picking up a distant toe at this point. But we're going to switch to the onboard of Vincent then as he charges through the circuit then, and we'll tell you through it. So turn 1, he's gone wide of apex a bit, but he has had a good run in 3rd gear at the moment. Charging up towards turns 2 and 3 then, flat out of course and hanging far to the right. Now braking hard at the 100 board here, coming down into 3rd gear, and just you can see he's just tapping on the throttle there to help turn the car through and get some power. And now coming through 4, nicely through 4 there, nailing it to the outside before charging through 5. He's going to hold onto that steering as hard as possible as he comes up into 6, and he's going to stamp it down to 3rd gear and misses the apex a little bit, but gets a good line. He carries a lot of momentum through, and this will help him in terms of overall sector time at the end of sector 2 as he comes out now and just about makes it through turn 7 without hesitation. Now into 8, where's he going to brake? Will it be the 100 board? It's about 100 to 90 metres, and he just misses apex there and carries too much momentum. You could see he had to hesitate about getting on the power and steady the car before he did. But in return now he's going to have a good run up into 10. Will he clip the apex curb? Just goes wide of it again. It seems as though Vincent's just missing the apex curbs at the moment as he now comes into 11, and he's going to try and attack this as much as possible. An initial lift before going full throttle and now charging down towards turn number 12. So up into 5th gear at this point and building that speed, continuing to build it, heading up to 185, 190, 195, about to hit that rev limiter and braking from 200 miles an hour. That's the highest top speed we've seen for the speed trap there so far, and nailing that high speed chicane. This is coming on to be a very strong lap, and you can see he's actually pulled quite a bit away from Evbev behind, as Evbev was very close initially, but Vincent is on a charge as he nails 14, albeit he could have used the track width a bit more there perhaps. And now coming into 15, braking at about 65 metres there and just about hooking up, but you could see that he did hesitate a little bit in terms of that he may have felt that he just went a bit too deep on the brakes there, and he'll need to correct that next time out if he feels that way. Now braking at about 140 metres, no, braking at 110 metres and nailing it on the brakes there, feeling very confident at just clamping it down the brakes, hooking up the low speed chicane, but then gets it all wrong on the power, coming out of 17. That is unfortunate, and Evbev's going to have to just simply fly through that and just misses the driver there as they come through the corner then, and Vincent has reset himself to the pits. And now coming through, we have got Evbev, who is essentially making his way round out of 19 and one more corner to go. Now I don't think this is going to be the ultimate lap because we saw that Vincent seemed to be significantly faster on his opening qualifying lap, but Evbev is going to set the pace on this opener, and we're going to see how everybody else responds. He'll be coming across the line with what looks to be about a 2-minute 37, a 2:37.0 to be exact. Not a bad opening lap. That was towards the rear of the field last time out with EU Division 1, but then again we are in Division 2 as somebody pops into the pits. That is Stan Lee. He's got on a fresh pair of boots, and we can see Marky Marks now going on to a lap, and ZenQ behind him here comes across with 2:45.4, but we are hearing some reports that there was a little bit of impeding as they were all going through in that train. We saw them all queuing up earlier, and there seems to be a bit of an incident between ZenQ and Marky Marks, and that'll probably go to the stewards after this one, as Vibes comes across with 2:55.5, well off the pace of some of our other drivers here, and Pie's coming out the pits right now, but we do have at this point in time Gomez coming across with 2:53.5. Vibes has that 55.5 we talked about earlier. Then we've got Otterface, who's just come across with a 2:42.9. So there's quite a sizable gap to our pole sitter at this time, albeit there's probably a lot more lap time out there. And we can see that Otterface has done his best to burn a huge amount of fuel out of the car, already burnt out 25%, and we've got half the qualifying session to go. Stan right now charging around circuit, of course. We've got Peachy at the moment, the Finnish driver, making his way through 18 and breaking into 19 then. Let's see what the Finn's able to do as he decides not to use the full width of entry into 19 there. He missed the entry curb, but you can imagine that's probably a preferred line. He doesn't want to risk running onto the grass there, and the grass will essentially pull the front right tyre further and further off into Narnia, and he'll get carried away with it. And as he comes through the final corner then, a rather simple run out the final corner for Peachy, as Rob's also following him across the line. How will these two do? Are they going to improve? So Peachy sets a 2:42.5 and Rob goes P2 of a 2:37.3, only 2.5 tenths off of our provisional pole sitter right now. So there's already a distinct gap between the guys right up front in terms of qualifying, where we've got literally two drivers separated by 2.5 tenths, and then we've got a sizable gap of 3 seconds down to P3. But then again, a lot of drivers right now are still making their way around the circuit, and still looking to find lap time. So I do not think for a second here that that is all of the story right now. If anything, we've got a lot more story to tell, and Marky Marks right now improving from his current time of 240.5, but that was coming out of the pit, and Marky Marks on his first hot lap then, as he goes very deep into the first part of the low speed chicane and not really getting confident on the power out of the second part. So I think that's cost him a lot of lap time here, but look how wide he's running into 18, and I think he's using that. He's going to try and go for the tightest possible exit line here in order to hang the car straight over to the right immediately, and Marky Marks doing so 4 tenths up on his previous lap at the moment, which was a pit lap of course, and coming out of 19, not using the full width there, perhaps not just carrying as much momentum as he could through the corner, and now into 20. Will he nail it up? Braking at about 100 metres here, braking at about actually 95 metres by the looks of things, and coming out of the final corner then, just missing the wall, very close like the wall of champions at the Canadian F1 circuit, and coming across the line with 240.2, not a bad lap, setting him P3 at this time. And whilst everything's been going on, Otto Face has had a bit of an incident coming out of the low speed chicane, but has set a 242.9, which sets him provisional P5 right now. Now further out on circuit, we do have Stanley charging around at this point. Now Stanley of course has yet to set a lap, so we're going to ride with the Dutchman here as he makes his way up into the circuit. So coming into turn 3, braking very late here and just doing a little bit of trail braking to compensate for the fact he broke later than perhaps planned and he missed apex, but he's 1/10 up at the moment on our provisional pole sitter FBev. And he's going to be charging around here. He's really attacking the circuit, going for a lot of late braking points, Stan. And I think he's trying to essentially carry a huge amount of momentum. And the tune on the car may be that he's set the car, particularly second and third gear, just to be as punchy as possible in terms of acceleration, as third gear is leading him all the way up to 140 miles an hour. And he's just building and building speed here. Now coming up into turn number 8, you can see braking at 75, a very late braking position there. Hooking it up on the anchors and coming through 9 up into 10, and he's going to go very late here as well, and that seems to be the preference of our drivers. They're going for very late braking points and trying to turn in at the last possible moment here to conserve as much momentum as possible. And coming through turn number 11, nailing it pretty well there, although it is worth noting that Rob D'Amico has now moved the goalposts in terms of that provisional pole of a 235.2 as we switch away from Stan's on board and now watch him flow through the high-speed chicane here. Will he hook it up with an entry speed of 199 miles an hour? Just hooking it up, and he's missed the exit there. He's gone wide, and that is an aborted lap because that will be a penalty if he doesn't immediately cede to slow down. That's unfortunate for Stan. He is going to have one more opportunity if he can get that car around, but he will not be able to put on fresh tyres, and Stan right now will be kicking himself quite a bit because he will know that he was probably on a good enough lap there to put himself definitely in the top 5. But in terms of changes then, FBev is currently on an out lap, having burnt off a bit of fuel and spent some time making his way around, as we see Vincent Simmer finally sets a lap. Vincent being of course the first driver who was on a lap but then boxed it into the wall when he came out of turn number 17, and well, he's set a 235.8, which is 6 tenths down on Robert's time in pole at the moment, but the Dutchman showing the ability to split the German and the Irishman. And we've got Gomez, who has set that 239.2. But again, keep in mind there is a sizable gap between P1 to P3 and then the rest of the field right now. In terms, it looks as though our top 3 are in a bit of a class of their own as Gomez cuts a huge chunk of turn 16 there. And I'm wondering whether he's going to accrue a penalty for that, because that was right on the limits. And there's the penalty, ladies and gentlemen, for using too much of the tarpaulin. A 1-second penalty, and Gomez will have the opportunity to go around one more time. But looking at how heavily worn those tyres are, I think Gomez has probably set his best possible lap, unless of course he's got a lot more in the tank and hasn't shown it yet. Explosive fireballs we haven't really talked about, running with a 241.3 in provisional P7 or P8 now as Marky Marks moves up. But one thing that's worth noting, and Pies moves up, I should actually point out, there into P3. But Explosive was 1 second up on his previous time there, and I think he's going to get to the end of the lap before the time is up, which means he'll get one more lap in after this one if he so desires it. The Jordan liveried Porsche thing coming around to complete a lap, and it is going to be what looks to be a 239, a 239.9. That is a very nice improvement by Explosive, and I think he's probably got one more second out there if he can hook up his exit speeds. As all of our drivers are starting to come around them, we do have 2 drivers coming down at turn number 14, and it looks as though there's been a bit of an incident at 14. We've got Rob parked off a circuit at 14 there, and Vincent also spinning the car around, just running up to 15, so there's been something that's gone wrong there for those drivers. But our first driver then, who will be completing their qualifying after those 2 who've botched their final qualifying lap, will be Pete Chiola, the Finnish driver, already up by 1.5 seconds on his previous time. And as he's coming through here, a long way off, we should point out, of our pole sitter at the moment, sitting on a 242.5 Peachy. He's going to be charging it around here. And coming through then turn 18, as we see charging through here, holding third, getting an upshifting to fourth on exit just to rotate the car in a bit more. But you can see how unsettled the Finnish driver was coming into 19. Just couldn't get the rear end stabilised, and that's cost him a lot of time there. And I'm wondering whether, well, effectively, Peachy might have been what was a much better lap than he's about to have. But then again, we'll find out. He still made it to the end, and he hasn't made any overall major mistakes. So coming across the line, this will be a 240 point. Ooh, a 240 point, well, 40.9 now, I think. But we're not seeing an up down on time. It seems to be listed as a 242.5 for some reason, which is not accurate based on what our timing screen showed us there. But still, we'll forget about that as Peachy has wrapped up in P9 for the time being. But our first driver then to come around to complete their final part of qualifying will be FBev, who remember is contesting for that pole position. Will he be able to beat Roberts 235.2? We're not sure as he comes out the final corner, and I don't think he's done enough. I think it's going to be a 237 as he gets a bit wide out the final corner. It's a 238.4, no improvement from FBev, as we have got Pies now coming charging down as well. We've got a number of drivers. In fact, Marky Mark's been the next driver to come across the line, and he's going to be setting a 240.8, which is not an improvement. And I think we've got Pies coming across the line now. We missed Stanley coming across. ZenQ improves massively for P2, and Pies improves to a 235.9, but it's not an overall improvement in his position. ZenQ setting a 235.6 for P2, and even more drivers coming through right now. We've got Gomez charging down towards turn number 20. Now Gomez sitting on a 239.2 so far. I'm going to wait and find out as he goes into the wall there, Gomez. I think he's overextended it a bit too much, and that is not going to be an improvement. He's lost 3 seconds from that wall collision. And in the rear of your camera shot there, I think we did have, well, it wasn't Otterface, but we're going to follow Otterface across as I believe Explosive Fireballs has improved to P9. Otterface then currently last of our runners. We're 242.9. It's going to be a sizable improvement, and it is a 237.0, putting him in P6. Well done to Otterface. So that is qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. So your pole sitter will be Robert D'Amico from Germany with 235.2. 4 attempts back, ZenQ Meister will be joining him on the front row. Then the second row will start off with a Dutchman and Vincent Simmer, with Pies only a tenth behind from the United Kingdom. Then we've got Evbev, who's currently sitting on what was a P5 there, with a 237.0. Then we've got Dr. Otterface alongside him in P6. Then starting off the next, well, sorry, not the next, yeah, it will be the next row, my apologies, with Pies leaving, that's throwing my numbers out the window. It'll be Stanley from the Netherlands, alongside him will be Phil the Vibes. And then starting off row number 5, it will be Gomez from Portugal, alongside of Explosive Fireballs in the United Kingdom. And then making up the final row of our starting grid will be Marky Marks in the United Kingdom and the Finnish driver of Peachy Erla. And it has been a good qualifying session for our drivers, and one thing that is worth noting is that the gulf in lap times does not seem to be as large as we previously saw at the start of qualifying, whereby we've got 4 tenths between P1 and P2, a further 1.5 tenths between P2 and P3, and then we've got a second and 2 tenths from P3 to P4. But you can imagine that this session was all about just simply nailing the best possible lap, whereas as we go into the race, it's about that consistency. And really, we're looking for gulfs in the region of about 2 seconds where we'll see clear splits between the drivers. And Otterface, for example, only being, well, 400ths off of Evbev. And conversely, we've got Stanley there, only half a second off of Otterface. You can imagine it's going to be quite a tight field. And what one would perhaps imagine is that the drivers who've qualified in the front 2 rows may try to essentially pull away and form a little pack of 4, much like what actually happened in, I think it was race number 3 last night, and also race 2. We saw that the lead group of drivers just pulled away, so that top 4 pulled away initially, and P5 and P6 tried to hang with them, but seemed to just gradually fall away as the laps went on, and they were starting to have their own little fights, and as they started to fight, you would find that particularly P3 and P4 would fall off of that. And as it carried on, we saw that the midfield really started to open up in terms of battling, and everybody was quite close. And we had a number of drivers simply come through by not making mistakes, whereas other drivers did make mistakes. So we're just waiting for our stewards right now to make a log of all the lap times that have come in. To clarify what's happened to Pies, ladies and gentlemen, nothing wrong with Pies. He simply had to pull out the lobby, so that way he is able to record the lap times and the starting grid for race number 1. So don't worry for Pies. I believe Pies did qualify P3 this time round. Okay then, so really now we are waiting to get underway with race number 1, ladies and gentlemen. So now is not the time to be running away and putting something in the oven. Instead, you want to be taking it out the oven and getting ready to munch on some popcorn and a little bit of, well, some fluids, as we'll be getting underway any moment now. And our first driver to head out onto the circuit then, just to get the camera away from glitching in the pit lane, will be the Jordan of Explosive Fireballs. Sorry, the Porsche of Explosive Fireballs. But really now, it's only going to be a minute or so before we get underway with race number 1. Ready, start hedging your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Who is going to be the one who will surprise everybody the most, or alternatively pull off the race win in number 1? Personally, for me, I think we could be seeing a little bit of a surprise from Pies. We know that perhaps he's not the fastest of the drivers here in terms of one-lap pace, but the flip side of the coin, of course, as we see Explosive, they're getting it wrong, and EvBev taking action around the outside of all places to go around the driver. And good evening to EvBev, Olaf, and Zeph Harms. Harmex, who are all in the chat right now. Hope you're all doing well and having a good evening. And EvBev, you don't want to be in the chat here, you need to be back out on the circuit. And we have seen that the slipstream strength has now been reset to weeks. I think there was a little bit of a mistake then qualifying. But then again, cutting down that slipstream zone from what is 2.25 seconds to that 0.8 second region really helped out avoid people from gaining a bit of a slipstream advantage in that opening train where we had a number of concerns. Explosive practicing his start, of course, there and snapping on the wheel there, just simply deploying the power and a little bit too much steering initially. But some of our drivers will be practicing starting without traction control here, and it's all about essentially nailing the RPM of the engine as we're going through the wheels and through the sequence of pulling up the gears there. And Explosive had a reasonable start there. So for Zeph Harmex, we are just about to get race number 1 underway. I suspect it's going to be less than a minute to go. But we are in the pre-sequence right now, just waiting as Explosive is doing more practice starts. So we're just waiting for an announcement from our steward in terms of when things are going to get underway. But whilst we're waiting to do so, I think really it will be Pies who will be the consistent one who may surprise us. And in terms of other drivers to watch out for Vincent Zimmer, because he is very, very fast. And also Robert, who I get the feeling, before being in his final lap, was on a purple set of sectors and could be essentially have been the driver who was on pole. Or at least improving it. Well, I think Robert was on pole. I'm being a complete nitwit there. But I think Robert had more in it, as we're about to get race number 1 underway, ladies and gentlemen. So we're through the countdown then. It is race number 1. We've all been waiting for this. So on the left of your picture will be Germany's Robert, and on the right will be Zenku Meister from Poland. On the left behind them, Vincent Zimmer, and on the right, Pies. Who is going to get the run into turn number 1? It's lights out and away they go, and all of our drivers getting a relatively clean start there. We can see that Dr. Otterface getting a very strong start initially, but then losing out in the second phase of the start. In terms of running down to turn 1, it looks as though Zenku's got the lead around the outside against Robert as they go through turn 1 then and up into 2. We can see that Dr. Otterface went wide there, but was able to keep it together, running alongside one of his competitors as they were coming out of turn 1 and up into 2. Vincent going for the move on the inside into 3, and I think Vincent has just got back done done, as we can see Feel the Vibes competing with Stan Lee for the inside line for 4 there, and these two drivers fighting means that Gomez is going to be able to get a lot of momentum as he's going through 5, but he's not got enough momentum to make a move, and I don't think he's going to go for it into 6, because it'll be a very tight apex if he tries to go for it into 6. It'll be a dangerous apex to try and contest on as well, but Zen Q-Meister right now leading the pack away, and I think, well, looking in the rear view picture, everybody's coming out of turn 7 relatively safely there, but Zen Q has pulled a bit of a blinder in terms of that opening start, going round the outside of Robert on turn number 1, and Stan getting it all sorts of wrong and clipping the wall, as does Pies coming out of turn number 7, turn number 8 I should say, and it looks like that was synchronised crashing if anything there, and I think Stan and Pies will both be kicking themselves as they've both dropped 2 to 3 places each. But coming now onto the straight for the first time, the long run down to turn 12, then it's going to be a 3-way fight I think for P2, with Vincent right now moving up into P2, but he's got Robert coming along his right hand side as Vincent returns to the racing line. Robert looking to make the move, but then realising there's no need right now, and he backs out of it as Vincent just about keeps within the limits. Now I'm wondering whether the stewards there will deem that that is a track cut, and it looks like Zen Q picked up a cut, as did Vincent. Both drivers went wide there, and they're both going to have to burn their penalties immediately as Rob takes emergency action to get out the way of Vincent there, who was ghosted, and Feel the Vibes tries to go for a cheeky move, and look at Feel the Vibes. Where on earth has Vibes come from? He's just literally appeared out of nowhere. Already up into P3 and on a charge, and now he's up into P2, and Vibes, is he going to be going for the lead coming down to the high-speed chicane as Zen Q takes his penalty and drops down to P4, and we've got Marky Mark just gradually building up a bit of momentum to catch up to this group, but Vibes is on a charge right now, and behind Zen Q seemingly rattled a little bit from the penalty he had to take across the bridge, battling side by side through 18 now with Vincent, who backs out and tucks in behind, and I think we have got a penalty for one of our drivers up front. No, my apologies, that's a miscorrection there. And we can see that Vincent is trying to get closer and closer, and all the way at the front as Marky Marks goes into the wall out of 19 there, and I think Pies is going to have to burn a penalty, but coming down into turn 20 it is going to be, as Rob has picked up the lead off of Feel the Vibes there in terms of getting away from him. It's going to be Rob leading from Feel the Vibes, then Zen Q-Meister, then Vincent Summer, and then behind them by 2.5 seconds it'll be Marky Marks, chased by Pies, followed by Picciola, followed by Dr. Otterface, and then Dr. Otterface, I say that, is looking for a move, but hold on a second, was there a move? I think he just went for a really late braking move, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to take a look back at that as Picciola is going for the return here, and I think Otterface is going to defend to the inside for 3 as he takes the outside of 2, and he goes late on the brakes here, trying to hold it, and Peachy trying to go for the initial cutback, but losing a lot of momentum. I don't think he had the confidence to think that Otterface had cleared him before turning into the apex, but let's just see what happened there, because that was a phenomenal battle. And so riding on board with Otterface right now, you can see that as he went in, he took emergency action there. In fact, there was going to be a collision if he didn't do that, but it's worked out for him. Peachy just surprising him with how early he broke into turn 1 by comparison with Otterface, and that really worked to charm for the British driver. But in return, of course, now he's got to try and find his way past Marky Marks, who has lost out to Pies, we should point out. Now, what happened there? Did Pies get it done up into 3? Well, it looks as though he'd already got it done before they come up into 6. So I think what's probably happened is that Marky Marks has made a mistake somewhere, probably coming out of 4, and that's how Pies has got the move done. But Pies on a mission now to try and get back up to the front, as we can see that Vincent and Feel the Vibes are battling, and in turn Rob is also battling here. We've got Vibes, Zen Q, all 4 of them all battling for that P1 right now, and forming that little pack as we predicted at the start. This pack of 4 all charging nose to tail as they come through the high speed chicane for the second time, and really just trying their absolute best here, as we can see that Vibes going defensive into 14 here, not just feeling comfortable to run the racing line. I think he's more worried about the Polish driver behind him than the German in front of him, feeling a bit of pressure from Zen Q right now, and we know Zen Q can go for some very aggressive overtakes, which are within the rules of course, but Zen Q will find an overtaking spot when you least expect it, and Pies is starting to gain on this cluster. But up front we can see that Rob is going for the move here, or at least trying to feint a move into turn number 16, but Vincent in return is not deterred by it and just takes the racing line and doesn't give unnecessary space there, and Vincent right now seems to be in control of this one for the time being. But it is a case, I think, in the case of Vincent right now, he just needs to nail the laps, because he knows that Robert and Feel the Vibes are battling for that P2, and also Zen Q, if he can get into that mix, will simply just mix things up enough for Vincent to get away. Now further back, Marky Marks has picked up a penalty. I suspect that is for cutting the low speed chicane, probably the tarpaulin. Alternatively, it could be over the bump as he's going through 17, but Peachy now on the charge here, and I think Peachy's going to have the move done into 20, because he will have a lot of momentum. He goes through it on the brakes, but doesn't have the overlay with Marky Marks' car, and I think In return, Peachy now is going to settle down, as we can see in the rear of your camera shot there. FBev, who's up into P8 now, and Stanley behind in P9, and Gomez clattering into the wall out of 20. And Oldo saying, I think we've got to change of position up front. And it is ZenQ who's gone to the outside for turn 3, and he's got it done on the braking against Feel the Vibes. And ZenQ is now up into P3, and I think he'll be relieved here because he'll know that Feel the Vibes was a very strong defensive driver, but now he's cleared him. But he's got it a bit wrong out of 4, and Vibes has got it nailed. Will Vibes go for the return counter there? As we can see, Robert as well right now has got back in front of Vincent as they come into this opening half of the lap. We missed the overtaking move on camera there, but we can see that Rob is back up into P1, and these two trading places non-stop, more trading than Wall Street right now. But in return, I think Rob, whilst he's stronger in the opening half of the lap, initially Vincent starts to come alive towards the end of the lap, and in return, Feel the Vibes is looking for a move, but not able to get it there, coming up into 10, and now coming through 11 here. We can see that ZenQ has gone wide and onto the grass, but he's just been able to hold it together and up ahead of these guys. ZenQ goes very wide out of 11, and it's going to be a drag race now for these two for P3, but there's an even more important drag race here, charging down towards turn number 2. Now, who's going to have it here? It's Vincent on the inside, but he's going to have to get on that racing line. I think Rob's going to concede, and there was contact between the pair of them, and Rob's off into the wall. Oh, goodness me, we're going to have to look at that one back, because I think Rob is going to be fuming at that one, and that means Feel the Vibes has been able to get into P2 in the drag race against ZenQ out of turn 11, and behind them, Pies now on a charge for a podium spot. It's only lap 3 of 4. They've still got at least one more lap to go, but that was a disaster for Robert, and it looked as though there was contact from our camera, and we will have to take a look back and see what happened. But right now in the battle for P2, it's really a three-way fight, and I think Vincent at this point is going to be thinking to himself, okay, well, I may have a steward's inquiry after this one, but just wait and find out. For now, just pull away and take the result, and then accrue a time penalty later if the stewards deem it, as Vibes gets it wrong, and Vibes is into the wall at 17, and that means, and we saw a driver get clipped there on the wall in round 2 for the EU Division 1 guys, but Vibes is now out of the battle for P2 and the chase for P1, and Pies, of all drivers now, is up into P3, and this is a surprise, and I think ZenQ will be wondering to himself right now, come on Pies, just keep it together, let's go chase after Vincent. He's only 2.7 seconds up the road, and we both know we're faster than him, so let's keep it cool. But I think the British driver's got other ideas. He's getting ever closer to the back of ZenQ. And coming out the final corner, ZenQ went very deep there and lost a lot of momentum. And I think Pies here is actually going to go for it into turn 1. He goes to the outside of the car, but it'll be the inside for turn number 1. But in return, he backs out of it. He hasn't got the run into the corner. And now as we switch away from them, we can see Rob is back in P5 and already on a charge, just ripping lap time out of Feel the Vibes. He's already taken 2.5 tenths out of Vibes out of turn 1 alone. We'll have to keep our eyes on Rob as he makes his way around for this final lap. Further back, however, we have got a battle building for P6. What with Marky Marks and FBev battling over that position right now. FBev a bit further back, and behind these guys, we've got a three-way struggle for P8 with Otterface holding on right now. Otterface having made some good moves so far, but in return, he's got Peachiola and Gomez chasing after him. And then in 11th, we've got Stanley after that disastrous opening lap, and behind him, Explosive Fireballs, who's a little bit way off the pace. But at this point, we can see Vincent still holding on and battling into turn number 8. You can see Pies going for the move on the inside, and they're side by side through the corner, and Pies just about getting it done there. A little bit of contact, I don't think anyone's going to mind that one. It was just simply Pies drifting wide with momentum, and ZenQ trying to intimidate a pass, and ZenQ then lagging over the circuit there. That was a bit confusing, but getting the pass returned into 10, and now in 11, he goes wide out of 11, and I think here, Pies is going to be a bit hesitant after that brief lag spike, but it is going to be a drag race down into turn 12 once again, much like on the previous lap, but I think this time the Brit has got it done, unless ZenQ goes to the mother of all sends into 12. Is he going to go for it? No, he's definitely not, because he knows if he carries the momentum out of 12 and 13 up into 14, he could have a really strong move on here, or will he simply respect the fact that Feel the Vibes is not that far back? He's gone very deep on the brakes, ZenQ, but look how he's holding it round the outside here, and Pies has had to give the space, and ZenQ has got it done, as behind Feel the Vibes goes off circuit at 14 and loses some ground, and you can see it's only 1.5 seconds to Rob now. Rob, over the course of this lap so far, has stripped out 1 second entirely since we last looked at the pair of them. And Pies is back up into P2 after ZenQ has got it a little bit wrong coming out of 16, sorry, not 16, 15, and now as they come up into 16 and 17, will there be a move on potentially between these two as ZenQ goes very deep and almost clips the wall there? That was a very, very difficult moment for ZenQ. I think he was thinking he was going to clip the wall, but it didn't quite happen in the end, and it's going to be an absolute charge then for the finish line between these two, and Feel the Vibe still in the back of your picture, only half a second down, and Rob only a further 8 tenths down, I reckon, by now, as he's getting close closer and closer, and they're all charging up towards turn 20 then. I think ZenQ's going to have to go for an absolute send if he's going to get this position. But meanwhile, coming across the line then to complete race number 1 is your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, Vincent Simmer from the Netherlands. And behind them, Pies has held on for P2, and it's ZenQ Meister in P3, Phil the Vibes in P4, and Robert DiMicchio filling up the top 5 positions in P5. Unfortunate for Rob, he'll be expecting more in the next race. We can see that Evbeb is going to come home in P6 as Marky Marks has dropped off, with Otterface in P7, Marky Marks holding on to P8 in the end, and Pete Shirler in P9. Gomez coming across the line in P10, and then Stanley bringing up the rear in P11. And I think we have lost a driver at some point, because we were... it looks as though it's Explosive Fireballs. But your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, Vincent. Now, that was an absolute cracker of an opening race then, and really I think it's going to set the mood for the next 2 races. Now, of course, there is going to be a bit of a spectre hanging over Vincent in the fact that we saw from our camera angle, it looked as though Rob and Vincent came together going into the high-speed chicane there, and Rob was, we saw, pushed off the circuit. Now, depending on whether Vincent had his steering wheel angled at a certain angle, whether Rob turned into him and bounced off, that's to be decided by the stewards. We could only see it from one camera, but there is a question around Vincent's win here that we'll have to wait to find out after the race. But for the time being, the classification stands as Vincent Simmer winning by 3.8 seconds over Pies, who did a valiant job of holding off ZenQ Meister with a ferocious charge right at the end from the Polish driver, who's still going to have plenty more racing to do. And I think ZenQ will be thinking to himself, it didn't work out in race number 1, but he's got the pace to win it in races 2 and 3. And a big shout out to Phil the Vibes there as well, in the fact that whilst he was contesting for the podium, he never slipped out of the battle for the podium at any point, and that P4 sets him up very nicely for the next 2 races. And Robert, of course, the one who we expected potentially, who was going to take the win in race number 1, finishing P5, he will know that it's now his chance to redeem himself in race number 2 and rebuild the momentum he lost in race number 1. Looking further down the field outside of our top 5, a bit unfortunate for Marky Marks, he wasn't able to hold on to that P6, but it looks as though FBev was really gaining some momentum. And out of the recovery drives, whilst Pies made a phenomenal recovery drive, coming all the way from effectively what was, I think, P11 after his mistake coming out of 8. Well, the one who was not able to recover as well was Stanley, finishing P11, the last of our running drivers, and there was a retirement from Explosive Fireballs. Now, I'm wondering whether the team can get that car fixed in preparation for race number 2. But one key thing to note as well is that the fastest lap was a 2:35.6. So the fastest lap this time out compared to race 1 last night, so EU Division 1, was approximately 2.5 seconds faster than this fastest lap. It was a 2:33.1 if I remember correctly. And well, we'll see what they can achieve in race number 2. But it was an absolutely phenomenal opener. And good evening to some of our other drivers as well, other viewers who've just joined in the stream chat. So, for example, we've got Martin, we've also got Lerb. It's good to see you guys in here, and I hope you're all doing well. And I'm just going to take a quick sip of water to make sure we have got plenty of voice remaining for the next 2 races. All our drives right now, just waiting to get underway with the second one. And there is an unfortunate irony with regards to the incident between Vincent and Robert as well. If you're wondering, folks, well, let me point out this. Vincent and Rob are teammates. So effectively, the number one thing you do not want to do in racing is have an incident with your teammate, because you're not only going to potentially face the wrath of the stewards, but also the wrath of the team principal, which, well, it's going to be a bit of shouting down in the paddock, I think, about that one. But they'll cool it down, I think. Put it down to a bit of an inexperience of battling, especially seeing as this was Vincent's first run in season 35. And, well, we'll see what they can get up to in race number 2. So, of course, we do have a dedicated team of stewards who look at the replays after the races. Of course, our drivers are expected to shout out with regards to any instance they feel that there was an incident or something which did not go their way, i.e. they were perhaps pushed off the track, or alternatively a driver impeded them unfairly in qualifying. But the flip side of the coin is as well that they also be looking out for things such as cutting the pit entry and exit lines. We've got the solid white lines. But that's the whole point here. Our drivers need to focus on the racing and then submit their reports afterwards. So nobody's going to be apportioning blame. Of course, in the chat, you're welcome to shout out your thoughts about what happens in the race. As long as it's kept civil, I don't mind. But Gomez right now just throwing the car around the circuit here, building up a little bit more practice time. I think Gomez will be wanting to redeem himself as we go underway with race number 2, ladies and gentlemen. Alrighty, so the story continues. This time, however, on the front row, on the left-hand side of your screen in P1, it is Vincent Zimmer, and on the right-hand side, it is Pies. Behind them, Zenq Meister and Feel the Vibes, respectively. And don't forget Robert back in P5 and Stanley in P11. How far up the grid can Stan come? Well, we'll find out in 4 laps' time and in 10 minutes. And it's lights out and away they go once again. And Pies bogging down initially at the start sequence there. And you can see Vincent had a relatively good start as they charge away up into turn 1. But it looks as though some of our drivers got caught out by the lights there a little bit as Vincent defends to the inside and gets a good run through the corner. Vibes into P4. Pies almost going off there and dropping down into P4 straight away. And we can see Dr. Otterface battling right now. 3 wide going through 2 and up into 3. And Otterface finding himself right on the right-hand side of a sandwich. He's going to be the bottom layer of the sandwich loaf, of course, as Pies has dropped all the way down to P7. Now, what has happened to Pies? He's had a disaster of a start, but Robert, meanwhile, speaking of people who've had good starts, Robert's up into P3 already, and he's passed Zenq, his main rival in terms of speed here, although it looks like Zenq's actually gone for a massive lunge into turn number 6, and as they go through 7 here, Robert's pulled back into P5, and FBev's up into P4, and Zenq is back into P3, as they're all charging down out, and right at the rear of your picture, we can see there is a battle. Stanley is up into P11, and got past explosive fireballs, but Stanley not making huge ground on the opening half of this lap, as we see somebody has gone off at the rear of your picture, and it is, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's the car of, well, it wasn't Marky Marks, we'll double check who it was shortly for you, but somebody has gone off and had a bit of a disaster. But it looks like it was the SAF delivery 962, well, it's not Robert's car, as they all come out then onto the second half of the opening lap. You can see up front Vincent is holding off, but there's a drag race, however, for P2 down into turn 12 between Zenq and Feel the Vibes. It's literally race 1 all over again, but Feel the Vibes will literally crowd Zenq onto the racing line, and I think he's actually had to back out of it because Zenq was right alongside and is holding on to that P2 for the time being. And in return, we've got a freeway battle here into turn 14 with Robert going to the inside of FBev, the Irishman, having to give the space here and, well, making contact with Robert, getting on the power too soon. And I think Robert is now up into P4 because FBev will have to cede the position because of the contact, and he does. And Pies now is in the pouncing seat as he tries to get the run into turn number 16. And it doesn't look as though he's going to get it here. It looks like FBev has tuned his opening gear ratios much more strongly than Pies for the run down into the low speed chicane. And you can see that Pies has decided to brake nice and early to try and get a better line through the corner, whereas FBev went a bit deeper there. Meanwhile, we've got Marky Marks up into P7 right now. He's had a very good opening lap, and Gomez in P8. Behind them, you've got Stanley, who's in P9, and the driver who had that incident on the opening lap was Dr. Otterface, the driver who got it all sorts of wrong out of 8 and went wide. We saw in the rear of the shot, but he's running around at the rear right now. But let's not forget about Otterface, because he could make up some significant ground as we go deeper and deeper in. And speaking of going deep, I'm wondering whether as we come around to start lap number 1, anyone's going to go deep into turn 1. So as lap 1 is completed, it is Vincent Zimmer coming across the line, followed by Zenq Meister, and then it is Robert De Macchero, followed by Feel the Vibes, who's battling with the German, and then FBev in P5, Pies in P6, then we've got Marky Marks in P7, Gomez in P8, Stanley in P9, Explosive Fireballs in P10, and then we've got Pete Chiola and Dr. Otterface bringing up the rear. But we focus back towards the front as it looks so Zenq's going for the move on the inside into turn number 3, and he parks on the apex and essentially says to Vincent, if you want it, you're going to have to go around the outside, hold on to it, because I'm not going to give you it. And the space has been ceded, and Zenq is up into the lead. Now the question will be, of course, how will Vincent come back here, because we know Vincent will want to get back in front of the Polish driver, and he wants to get away from Robert, because can you imagine those two fighting once again? Well, Vincent gets it wrong on exit there of turn number 6 as they come through 7 and over the brow of the little hill and charge down, and Vincent almost clipping the outer wall there, of all places to hit a wall. That's the last one you'd expect. He misses it, fortunately, and it's 6 drivers right now, all competing for P1. They're all within approximately 2.5 seconds of one another, as Vincent carries a lot of momentum through 9 up into 10, and he goes for a very late lunge from very far back, and ZenQ has been pushed wide as a result of it. And ZenQ rejoins in P5, and that way he rejoins in P6 as Pies moves up. And Robert right now is on the charge against his teammate, and oh goodness me, not again. It's going to be 4 wide, charging down in towards turn 12. You can see they're all trying to slip into one other slipstream here before getting a positional advantage, and FBev essentially hanging him right behind Vincent there. I'm wondering if there was a little bit of a bump draft going on there to essentially say to Vincent, please get ahead. But both drivers have gone wide out of 13, and I think we're going to see a pair of penalties for these drivers, as we can see Robert going for the power slide into 14, and FBev picks up a penalty as Vincent's into the wall. He just hooks it up on the power too soon, and that means we have a new race leader in the form of Robert as they're coming into turn number 15, and they're coming onto the bridge right now, and we've still got a 4-way drag race coming down up into the low speed chicane. In fact, 5 cars, because let's not forget ZenQ's right in the rear of your picture right now as he's coming up, and let's ride on board with ZenQ, who's probably thinking to himself right now, oh, for crying out loud, I don't mind overtaking one, but 4 of them as they're all fighting, and ZenQ's got it wrong, so another one bites the dust right now, and that's down to 4 drivers in that battle for P1, and Pies right now knows he's on a mission to try and get back onto the front spot as they're all coming up into turn 19, and Robert can start to run away. And meanwhile, further down, we can see that with all the disasters going on, Gomez, the Portuguese driver, just crept his way up into P6, and he'll feel satisfied, as in the rear of your shot, we've got a 4-way battle for P7, well, 5-way battle at this rate, as Marky Mark seems to be falling in a little bit of a truly train as they're coming up into turn 20, turn 20, and we can see that going for a move will potentially be Dr. Otterface, but Explosive Fireballs holds on to it there. He goes for the defensive line and is able to hold on, but in return, now Otterface is looking for a move initially, but backs out of it and then goes for it once again. I'm wondering if Otterface here has got a sort of half and half decision complex as he goes in and he goes for a lunge, and Fireballs drops the position. And Peachy battling side by side with Vincent. And Vincent will know he's got everything to do to try and get back up towards the front row now as they're charging into turn number 3, and Vincent has made the move stick for P10, but ahead of them Marky Marks has gone wide and he's dropped places. Marky Marks has got it all sorts of wrong, and he's dropped right back into this battle after starting to pull away with them all fighting, and he's dropped all the way down to P10. That's a disaster for the British driver, as now we have a new P7 driver in the form of Dr. Otterface. Will be thinking, right, let's break the curse of not being able to get away as ZenQ Meister retires from the race. That's our first retirement. We now only have 11 runners. That's a disaster for ZenQ. He's out of the race, and we'll have to see if he can recover. But up front, Robert is not getting away from FBev. Now, these two drivers were trading lap times, and we expected them to trade lap times in qualifying, and now they're trading potential lap time in this race, and Pies is not too far back, only 6 tenths off of them, and then Feel the Vibes a further 1.3, but of course, he will be in that slipstream zone of both Pies and FBev, a very distant one, but they're closing up. We'll keep our eyes on it, of course, as they come through the high-speed chicane. Will anybody get it wrong this time? No, everybody's nailed this one. So Gomez up into P5, and behind them, Otterface now up into P6 with ZenQ retiring, and I think these drivers will feel very chuffed with themselves in these positions right now, and we can see that Explosive Fireballs is on a bit of a charge, and he's actually pulled away from the pursuit of P7, so he's holding on right now, and Pete Chiola up into P9 has got away from Vincent Simmer. I think Vincent has had a mistake somewhere, because look how much time he's lost. He's lost 11 seconds. We didn't see that on camera, but Vincent's had a disaster. And hold on a second, up front here, we can see that Pies, I think, has got the move done on FBev. Now, what happened there? Because that was very sudden. So coming onto the bridge then, we can see that FBev just got it all sorts wrong, and Vibes went into the wall there. We will come back to that, folks. Vibes went into the wall, but then it was just a drag race, and Pies got it nailed in terms of the drag race. As we flick back to the live action then, and FBev now 8 tenths down, and let's take a look at what happened to Vibes in terms of coming through the corner. So he just simply got on the power too soon, and well, hello, there's your wall. And, well, he's been able to recover it. Fortunately, it didn't spin him out. Instead, he was able to ricochet back onto the bridge and in the right direction. So Vibes there not losing as much time as he could have, and it means he's going to hold on to that P4. But I think Vibes will be counting his stars right now that he's just simply in P4 and not all the way down in, say, P6 or P7. As looking further back, Marky Marks is being caught by the Finnish driver of Pete Chiola, as we see another retirement. That's 2 retirements in this race. Explosive Fireballs has had to retire the car after making a huge amount of ground and making his way up into P7. That's that's a disaster for the British driver. But as Marky Mark's now charging down towards turn number 1, he's going to hope to hold on against the Finnish driver here. And up front, we can see that now Pies is getting closer and closer to the German who's running away with it. Well, was running away with it of Robert, but Robert is losing out time here. And I think Pies is coming to life. I think he's been saving this up. He's been studying Robert's lines, and I think he's going to try and go for the opportune move as Robert starts to look a bit more defensive. And Pies went for a cutback there. Of all places, go for the momentum cutback out of 7 and now up into 8. And I think he's going to try and hang it around the outside on braking. This is going to be very risky stuff because it's such a tight apex line before the track widens up. And Rob giving Pies enough space, and Edmund's getting into the mix here. We're going to have a free side going up into turn 10. Steady now, boys. Pies is going to have that inside line, and Rob tries to turn in, and Rob goes a bit deep as a result. And I think Pies has moved up into P1, and he feels that he's been able to hold on to the position as Robert has full back, and Evbev is right in between the two of them right now. And I think these all could come together once again, but it's Phil the Vibes in P4 who almost goes off onto the gravel there. It's going to be a drag race down to into turn 12 between the three up front, but I don't think there's going to be a move right now. But wait, I think Evbev could go for a move here if he nails the chicane, and he's nailed it, but Pies has had an even better chicane. There's not going to be a move here into 14. That would be an absolute lunge if there was. Further back, meanwhile, Otterface is starting to feel some pressure from the Portuguese driver, and hold on a second, I think there's been a change for P7. Alternatively, there was a mistake. Let's just find out what happened there, because we have seen a change of positions. So I think Peachy has just had a drag race down the straight here in 212, and I think Marky Mark's just had no speed, and that means Peachy's got the move done. But let's come back to your drivers up front, folks. We can see that Pies is being pressured heavily here, and the German of Robert looks to go to the inside of the low-speed chicane initially, but he thinks second of it. I think he's trying to distract the Irishman in front of him to go for the battle for P2 rather than the battle for P1, and it's going to be all down to who comes out of turn 20. Then nobody's going to have any respite as they're coming into the final two corners. Who's it going to be? Your bets are on now, and I think it's going to be Pies unless he gets it all wrong, and Pies does not have the best of runs out of 19. Evbev will try and get the sling in here, and he's going to go for a lunge. This will be the time he's going to send it. Will he go for it? We've got one corner to go, and I don't think he's got, and Rob's clipped the wall. Now will Pies just nail it on exit as Robert clips the wall again, and I think it's going to be Pies across the line as race winner. It is Evbev second, Robert third, and then Feel the Vibes coming home in a very lonely but happy fourth place. And then it'll be Dr. Otterface who'll be coming home in P5 to complete the top 5. Gomez missing out on that top 5 by 2.5 seconds. And then we've got Picciola who's held on to P7. Well done to the Finnish driver who's had a very strong result, the best of his results tonight. And then in P8 it'll be Marky Marks. And then in P9 it'll be Vincent Summer. And then bringing up the rear of our field, albeit 12.5 seconds behind right now in P10. The last of our runners, it'll be the Dutchman of Stanley as he comes across the line then to complete our running order. A little bit of side-to-side action. Goodness me. And we had two retirements, of course, the former ZenQ and Explosive Fireballs. But forgetting all that, your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, Pies from the United Kingdom. Well, that was an absolutely insane second race. And looking at those race results, then you can see after the 4 laps, your race winner was Pies. And, well, there was nothing between our top 3. In terms of only 6/10 separated our top 3. And then there were some sizable gaps further down the field. Goodness me, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolutely phenomenal second race. And now the big question, of course, will be, if that's what it's been like in races 1 and 2, which has been non-stop, what is going to happen in race number 3? Oh, goodness. But I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And whilst we've got some time, and welcome to Spinola09. Good to have you here tonight. And for those, if you did miss this race, of course, this stream will be made available after tonight. It will be available on the Twitch video on demand for 2 weeks, and that will be made available in the GTSRL Discord as well. And we are hearing reports, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I think Explosive Fireballs may be out of race number 3. Unfortunately, they've had to retire the car in race number 2, and they may not be able to get it repaired for the final race. We may only have 11 runners in the finale tonight. But the big question will, of course, be then, given that the finale is the race whereby we have that little strategic element in terms of the mandated pit stop, how will ZenQ do? Because ZenQ, having retired from race number 2, will be starting right at the back in race number 3. But we know ZenQ is a very fast driver, and if anybody's going to come from the back, well, we've already seen how Pies literally went from P11 after the first sector on lap 1 of race 1 and made his way all the way up into the top 5 by the end of that race. Well, if anybody can do it, it'll be ZenQ who charges his way up through the field. And now our drivers are going to be given an approximate 5-minute break just to simply calm themselves down, perhaps have a quick bathroom break, a bit of a comfort break as well, and then we've got that one more race underway. But really, I think personally for me, it could be between any of our top 3 right now in terms of Pies, FBev and Robert. But don't count out Phil the Vibes as well. I think Vibes could be on for a podium in this one because he has been showing strong, and if it weren't for the fact that he clipped the bridge when he was coming across the bridge on lap number 3 effectively and started to fall away, I think Vibes could have actually had a shot at a podium simply because of the fighting between the top 3. So the British driver there will feel happy with himself overall, at least I hope he does. He'll probably be kicking himself a bit as well, knowing that he made a silly mistake that cost him the opportunity of a podium. But there's one more to go, and with 50% more points up on offer, well, it's all about it. But really now, we are just waiting as we're looking at a lovely Martini livery of Vibes' car, of course. But we're just waiting to get underway then as we have the change of time of day. We're now at 10 to 8 in the evening. The sun is starting to set across the circuit, and we are going to have that low sun, of course, which can make it a little bit more difficult to be able to see certain parts. As we're seeing that ZenQ Meister is having some connectivity issues. We did see that ZenQ was having some latency issues in race number 2, and that may have been the reason for the retirement in race 2. So ZenQ, of course, is going to try and see if he can get those fixed before we get race 3 underway. But now we are just waiting. So we've got a couple of drivers parked up. I think a couple of our other drivers, I'm hopeful, will be starting to roll out onto track, and they'll be making their way to the grid. And I think we may have, I think we've got a pit bug as well. So drivers are actually stuck in the pits now. So everything is going up the wall, and we have got a time remaining counter. I'm not sure what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Everything seems to be going horrifically sideways right now in terms of the lobby. But we're just going to wait and find out. It does mean that the program for tonight is a bit delayed, but still, despite the delays, it is, well, it's been frantic. It's been as good as EU Division 1, if perhaps not even a little bit better than EU Division 1, although that was frantic as well. And we are having a lobby restart, ladies and gentlemen. So Pies is going to crash this lobby, and then we will be starting a new lobby, as hosted by Pies, of course. So we will leave the room, and we'll wait for him to reform it, because we've had 2 pit bugs in a row. Very unfortunate, of course, that we are getting these bugs tonight. It seems as though we're getting all of our bad luck in one single go. But we're just waiting out patiently. So in the meantime, what wonderful historical fact does GT Sport have for us today? Oh, it's that the MV200 became a New York taxi produced by Nissan, and it became a New York taxi in 2012 on this very day. And today also marks the Diamond Jubilee of Elizabeth II. Well, you're getting your full mix there, ladies and gentlemen. You're getting a bit of news, a bit of race drama, absolutely frantic action, a picture of a Porsche 911 Carrera RS. You've got everything you need on the stream. And then there's the rear of a BMW M4 Coupe as parked in Norway. Okie dokie, so I think the lobby has just been closed down, so we are going to look to rejoin. Just waiting for it to be constructed. We're just waiting to be told. Still waiting on an announcement of when the lobby's been reformed. And there she is. So we are rejoining the lobby right now. That lovely sound of the go-kart, of course, which precedes what will be happening after race number 3. But more on that later. Yep, still waiting. I think we may also now, because we've had a lobby restart, be going for another, pardon me, going for another stock check just to make sure everybody can pull off okay. So we are going to get a bit of delay in the proceedings here for race number 3. But vibes again, just doing some practice starts by looks of things. We've got FBev coming out onto circuit right now. Stanley's teammate, of course, and FBev doing a phenomenal job tonight as part of the team. I think FBev here just getting a bit of an itch on in terms of wanting to get race 3 on the way, because he knows that he's got some work to do in terms of pulling off the race win here. But just making his way around right now, and of course with the sun setting it gets darker and darker, so now it's going to be a pretty dark one, this one, and that could throw some of our drivers out in terms of the lack of overall light. And the slipstream has been reset to weak as required by our stewards. I think now everyone's going to be readying up, and then we are going to be, well, I'm wondering if we're going to have a start check or not. So just waiting for an announcement as to what the proceedings are. Are we doing a start check, or are we just getting straight into it? As soon as I hear anything, folks, I will let you know, of course. Of course, we are hoping that we can get racing underway in the very near future, because I'm getting quite the itch now. Okay, we are going to be starting the race, ladies and gentlemen. They are going straight into this one. There is no hesitation. We're going straight in on this one, so it'll be race number 3. Here we go then. So without further ado, the final race of tonight. Well, the final Group C race of tonight and the one for the standings. So on the left it will be Pies and on the right it will be FBev. Behind them, Robert and Feel the Vibes respectively, but keep an eye out at the back of the field for Stanley and ZenQ, our 2 rearmost drivers who will be looking to make their way all the way up to the front as we have 7 laps and a mandatory pit stop. And it's lights out and away they go, and it looks as though everybody's got a reasonable start this time, although Otterface has had quite a strong start, as has Peachy earlier, in fact, who's moved up to P5 already and is on the inside into turn number 1. I think Peachy is going to hold on to his gains, as it looks like FBev has actually got the run on the inside into turn 1, so he's got past Pies and Feel the Vibes up into P3 past Robert, but further down, meanwhile, you've got Dr. Otterface, who's made some gains and regained the position on Peachy, as Gomez cuts the emergency road there, and there's been a number of incidents, in fact, as Otterface has got it all sorts of wrong. We've also got a driver off into all that Stan Lee. Oh, goodness me, it's a disaster for Stan, 3 out of 3, and Pies is dropping ground right now compared to everyone else. I think he might have got it a little bit wrong in 4, but it means that Vibes is up into P2 as he's gone wide, and Vibes rejoins behind him, and Robert is looking to the inside in 7, and I think as they all come over the brow then down into 8, FBev is running away with this one, and look, in the rear of your shot there, you've got Gomez, who's now trying to make a move for P5, battling with Vincent Simmer, who's made a lot of ground. Vincent, of course, having a bad run last time out, and Vincent is up into P6, battling with Gomez for P5, who's going to come out on top. It looks like Gomez goes to the inside, a little bit of argy-bargy into 10 there, but both drivers making it through, and Vincent has been able to hold the position, and that means Vincent is now in P5 and Gomez in P6, and Peachy has lost quite a bit of ground. And then you can see, meanwhile, we've got a bit of a drag race forming up already, coming down into 12, with the fact that you've got Robert leading against Feel the Vibes, but Vibes will know here he has got the slipstream potential. But with the heavy fuel load and also relatively cold tyres, he needs to lock it into place coming out of the high speed chicane. He's done that. Vincent is now gaining, however, and we can see that Vibes getting very late on the brakes there and almost clipping Robert. I think that might have caught Vibes out a little bit because he has gone onto the grass and has taken the defensive line into 15, and he's just about holding on right now versus Vincent Simmer. But Vincent is the man on a mission to try and get back past Feel the Vibes and essentially up into that top 3. He is charging right now, having gained a lot of places on the opening lap so far, and we haven't even come to the end of the opening lap. We're just getting towards the end of it right now, but Vincent is pushing hard here, and further behind him Gomez, don't rule the driver out, the Portuguese driver here in P6, who is doing a very good job and has made up some good ground on the opening lap. Mark's charging after them as well, and then you've got a little bit of a gap forming where you've got ZenQ Meister right now, who's closing ever more on Peachy, as Dr. Otterface in P10 has fallen away to 5.6 seconds. Now looking back up towards the front of our grid, in terms as they're charging around now in towards turn 20, we're going to see there's not really any moves coming on at the moment. As they come out of turn 20 then to complete lap number 1, it is FBev, followed by Pies, 1, 1, 2, 3. And behind them, you've got Robert in P3, Feel the Vibes in P4, we've got Vincent in P5, Gomez in P6, Peachy in P7, Peachy in P8 right now, as I think we've got Mark's in the pits, so that's going to throw a little bit of a spanner, but we definitely see ZenQ has made his way up into P7, and behind them then Mark's, I think, who has gone for a fresh set of tyres immediately in P9, and Otterface in P10, and then last but not least of our running drivers, it's Stan Lee. Now looking back up front, we can see that Pies is gaining a massive lead on FBev right now and really pushing hard, and I think what he's trying to do here is put the pressure on FBev early to try and force FBev to go for an early pit stop and end up in traffic, or simply into a mistake. But behind them, Robert has fallen back a bit, and I think Robert has probably made a mistake somewhere because of the fact he's dropped so far back. Let's just take a look back on camera shot, and we can see that Vincent got it very wrong coming out of turn number 3, and Robert getting it wrong as well coming out of turn number 4 and into 5, so that's why these guys have fallen back, and Vibes must be smiling to himself right now because he's up in P4, and ZenQ, remember what we said about ZenQ, he's all the way up into P5 right now and charging. But in talk about charging, you can see that Pies getting the better run out of 11 initially, and that's the momentum race down into 12. We're going to have a drag race on our hands here, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to keep an eye on our timing screens as ZenQ Meister, as he made a lot of ground, but Pies going for the inside then into 12, 12. Will he be able to hold on to it? I think he's got it on the braking so far, but note that he wasn't able to rejoin the racing line, and FBev carried a lot more momentum, and I think Pies is going to be cut back in by FBev here as he goes for the return pass on the inside. Now, will Pies go for the cut back out 14? He nails it. Now it's the run up into 15 before they come onto the bridge, but Pies thinking better of it here, and I think the reason he's thinking that is because he knows that himself and FF have got a lot more ground over Robert right now. That 2.6 seconds is critical for them. They do not want to fall back into the clutches of Robert. Speaking of falling back into the clutches, you can see in the rear of your camera shot as they come across the bridge, we've got a charging Polishman chasing after a rather defensive Britishman, where Feel the Vibes right now has got ZenQ coming up behind him ever faster and ever more present, and Marky Marks is up in P6 and forming a little bit of a train, what with Peachiola and also Dr. Otterface right behind him. But he's doing a very good job of holding on here, Marky Marks, and our driver, who whilst he's not the fastest, once he gets the position, he knows how to hold on to it, and both Peachy and also Dr. Otterface are going to have to be inventive to get past him here. Vincent Simon, meanwhile, is now on the charge, trying to regain, and we can see that FBev is going for the move on the inside into turn number 20 here. I think he was defending onto the inside there rather than actually going for a major move, and Pies is still trying to size up his opponent here. As we see in the rear of your camera shot, we saw that ZenQ clipped the wall and then came out from behind Feel the Vibes, but also I think clipped the wall, and it's a drag race down into turn 1. ZenQ on the inside, Vibes on the outside. ZenQ's just got now his braking point. It's into the wall! Oh, wait a minute, what on earth's going on here? And it looks as though Feel the Vibes has picked up a 1 second penalty for the latency spike off of ZenQ's car there, because ZenQ was in the wall, then he was, and that is really pandering to confusion for the British driver there, as ZenQ goes off, I believe, there, and I'm not sure what's going on with regards to ZenQ here, as Dr. Otterface has managed to get up into P6. Now, what on earth has happened there? But before we find out, will he hold on? Because Marky Marks right now is charging back at him, and I'm wondering whether Marky Marks is going to go for a move. Well, it doesn't look like it, so let's find out what happened in the battle for P6. So Marky Marks come through turn 1 then, and I think Otterface just got a really solid run through 2 and up into 3, and may have got it on the braking coming up into 3 here. He looked to the outside then, and then I think he went for the cut battle. Was there a bit of contact actually? And I think Marky Marks has gone wide. There may have been a little bit of a rub up the backside in terms of contact, but Otterface got it done, and Peachy's just dropped away from that pair. He's made a mistake somewhere and falling off. But in terms of not falling off right now, it's a repeat of the previous lap. It is Pies behind FBev, and they're both charging down, and Pies once again going for that drag race. He's going to go to the inside into 12, and this time will he try and get back on that racing line, or will he try and park it a bit through the high-speed chicane in order to block FBev's momentum? And he did park it a bit better this time. You can see that FBev has not got as much of a momentum swing, and FBev goes to the initial look to the inside through 14, but then realises that Pies this time has curbed his momentum, and FBev is now settling in, as behind them you can see that Robert has made a mistake on exit of 14, and the German has now got to do all that work again to close up the 1.5 seconds he previously closed up on our 2 race leaders. So Robert not having the best of the laps, but meanwhile ZenQ up into P4 right now, and I think Feel the Vibes has essentially ceded the place because of the contact earlier, or there may have been a mistake from the British driver, but he has fallen back quite a bit, and we can see that really it's now becoming a three-way fight for P4, what with the fact that Otterface is charging after these guys and getting ever closer, but Pies meanwhile up in the lead is doing a good job of holding off the Irishman at the moment, and it looks like FF is not able to regain that lead this time out, although both drivers do get through 19 very well. FF carries a bit more momentum, and that will give him the advantage under braking into 20 if he so desires it. But now it's all about the strategy, because the strategy element here will come into play. Now, does Pies pit early? 90's got the gap, and Pies is in, and FF, they're both in, so that means our new race leader at this point in time will be Robert, I believe. Unless they both don't go for a tyre change here, it'll be very close, as more drivers are peeling into the pits, including ZenQ Meister and also not Dr. Otterface, in fact. Feel the Vibes has come in, but Robert right now has come out as our race leader, and looking, we can see that both Pies and FF have both taken fresh tyres. Meanwhile, Otterface, who's yet to pit, is still running around and holding on to P4 right now. Looking further back, we can see ZenQ's pit stop has not worked out too well for him, in the fact he's come out in traffic, and Marky Marks has been promoted to P5. Now, we just switched to ZenQ. Let's see, did he put on a fresh set of tyres? He did go for the fresh set of tyres as well, so all of our pitters so far going for a fresh set of rubber to take them to the end. I think this will just give them a bit more momentum in the chase for places, and the question will be, of course, now with respect to Pies versus FBev, is how soon do they close up to the back of Robert, because that gap is only 2.5 seconds, and with the fresh tyres here, I'd say at this point in the race, those fresh tyres are going to be worth approximately half a second to 0.6 of a second, because Robert will not be feeling too much tyre wear, but you can see that front left in particular on Robert's car is starting to show some significant graining, whereas Pies and FBev are still fighting one another, and Robert won't be able to come back out in front of these guys unless they have a whole calamity between one another. But them fighting is going to cost them time in the battle and trying to break away from Robert after the strategy element. Otter facing P4 still, and Marky Mark's holding on to that P5, but ZenQ right now going for a move on the inside for 11, and then the run down to 12. And I think Peachy has decided to hang to the side on the left in order to stay in the slipstream of Marky Mark's, but Marky Mark's now pulling over to the racing line, and that means that ZenQ has been given the slipstream initially, but Peachy had a lot more momentum as they broke back onto the racing line, and it means that ZenQ has fallen back into P7 for the time being. But the Polishman is all over the back of the finishman there, and as they go under braking now, I think ZenQ is going to go for it, and hold on a second, there's a bit of latency once again, and it looks as though Peachy's been knocked wide by ZenQ. Well, it looks like that on screen, but of course it's hard to tell. No, there's contact! There is huge contact behind between Phil the Vibes and Vincent Summer, and what happened between those two, we're just going to find out, but we can definitely see that Vincent Summer has backed out of it there because there was mega contact between the two. So Vincent was actually leading the pair coming into the corner here and got it wrong, and I think he's going to get on the power too soon and get it sideways. Yep, he lost control of the car. Phil the Vibes tried to go around the outside of the two, and he's gained the position, but that's cost him some time, and Vincent will be regretting that as Gomez is in P10 and Stan is in P11. But up front it is Robert, who is only 2.5 seconds still ahead of Pies, and I think FBev is being smart here. I think he's realised there's no point these two fighting until Robert takes his pit stop, simply because Robert right now still needs to take his pit stop. And the problem with Robert right now is when he takes that pit stop, he's going to lose a minimum of 5.5 seconds from his current on-track position. And Otterface now comes into pits, and this is important for Otterface. Where will it bring him out in relation to the other drivers? So ZenQ's come through, as has Marky Marks. So Marky Marks has gained quite significantly here, but remember, he's yet to pit Marky Marks from what we remember. And Otterface is going to come out behind Phil the Vibes. So Phil the Vibes, it's worked out for the British driver that pit stop, and he's gained on Dr. Otterface a bit, but of course the battle with Vincent has meant he's lost time overall. And Marky Marks right now, well, the question will be, when is he going to pit the British driver? And I think he'll probably be pitting within the next lap, because he's only got 2 more to go, and this will be the time to pit, because he'll need those fresh tyres. So he's going for a fresh set of tyres going up into the end of the race. Peachy, I think, has just gone for the pits, and so is Stanley from the rear of our running drivers, as Peachy has pitted. Now up front, meanwhile, we can see that the battle between FBev and Pies is intensifying once again. Pies has only got a 3/10 of a gap between himself and FBev, and Robert is now actually starting to pull away a little bit, so these two are fighting once again, and FBev going for a huge lunge, and it has not worked out for the Irishman there. He's just simply missed it. Let's just see what happened in terms of that send there. I think he was a bit too adventurous. We'll ride on board then. Now, he tapped Pies initially into 7, and into 8, and as they came into 9 here, he flashed his lights, and I'm wondering, did he just miss his braking point entirely? Yeah, he just missed his braking point. He went for it, but forgot his braking point there, and he just planted it into the wall. And that means now, really, the driver who could win this by simply holding it together and not making a mistake is Pies. He's 5.6 seconds up on the Irishman, and if he doesn't make a mistake in the final 2.5 laps here, it's going to work out for him. And ZenQ now will be on a charge, because he'll be smelling blood in the water in the fact that FBev is only 3.5 seconds up the road, and the Polishman knows that he is the faster driver of the two when it comes down to single lap pace. So that's what we've seen in race trim. But meanwhile, Marky Marks, who hasn't pitted yet, we've got a bit of a train forming here in the fact that Otterface is trying to get around. He's got Vibes right on his 6. So as they're charging down the bridge here, will there be a move into the low speed chicane for Otterface as Vibes is getting ever closer? And I think Marky Marks is going to hold on here, but Phil the Vibes meanwhile takes a little peek initially, but doesn't go for it. And as we ride back from Marky Marks' car right now, you can see that, well, Phil the Vibes is trying to set himself up to get the double speed in terms of the slipstream off of both, as Otterface clipped the wall and entry into 18 there, and he's backed out of it immediately. He's lost a huge amount of momentum, and now it's up to Vibes. Can he pass the British driver in front of him, or will they simply wait until Marky Marks comes into the pits? As you can see, the momentum game as Robert comes into the pits from the lead. This will be critical in the run for the battle for P2 right now. We'll keep our eyes on that as Vibes going for a move. They're all looking towards going for a move, but they settle in behind Marky Marks. And coming out the pits right now, we've got Robert, who's come out ahead of FBev. And has he gone for a fresh set of tyres? He has indeed, and Marky Marks is still out on circuit. He's still holding on, and Feel the Vibes is going for a look into turn number 1. He isn't able to make it go, as he goes wide there, and this means that Feel the Vibes surely is going to have a huge swing of momentum here, because if he doesn't, then it's going to be different. And we've got a yellow flag up ahead, and now what has happened here? I think there's been an incident. It's FBev. FBev has had a major incident. We're going to find out what happened very shortly, but let's see. Has there been the move from Feel the Vibes? No, and there's still Marky Marks is holding on for dear life. This is a colossal defensive effort from the lead British driver in this fray, but you can see Vibes is getting ever more impatient, ever more closer to the back of the yellow 962. And will the Camel racing car hold on for much longer? Well, I think the Martini racer here has finally got it done. He's going to the outside into turn 8. It's going to be a battle on the brakes, and Marky Marks tries to straighten his braking. Vibes goes around the outside. He's pushed wide onto the gravel, and he's going to be fuming at that, because he'll feel that Marky Marks should have given him the space. And onto face here, he's getting closer and closer to one has fallen, but 2 to go in this battle for P5. But that's a disaster there for Feel the Vibes, but he'll be raging at that afterwards, I can imagine. And that drops him down to P7, and he's got Vincent Simmer now charging after him. But meanwhile, in the drag race, we can see there is huge contact between Marky Marks and Autoface, but Autoface has got it done in the drag race. Now, surely Marky Marks is not going to go for a lunge into 12. That would be crazy on those tyres, and Autoface has cleared him. Now, let's find out what happened to the Irish driver of FBev here as we take a look back earlier on in the lap. So he was coming up then into turn number 3 for the 6th time of asking, and under braking, does he just get it wrong here? He seems to carry a huge amount of momentum, goes to get on the power, goes onto the grass, and the rear end snaps out from underneath him. And that is the story of the Irishman dropping down to P4, which means ZQ right now is running on the bottom step of the podium, and he's still got 5.5 seconds to close on Robert, who in turn is a further 2.8 seconds off of Pies. So really, this is Pies' race to hold on to now, as there's only 1 and a bit laps to go. But further down, you can see that Marky Marks has fallen away after Otterface has finally got past him, and Feel the Vibes will be in the battle with Vincent right now, as Vincent is getting closer and closer. And I think Vincent might be looking for the move then on the final lap versus Vibes. Both of these drivers have pitted, of course, and it's quite some way back to Peachy, who's got a huge gap over Gomez and Stanley. But as they come around then to begin the final lap, we can see that Pies and Robert on our radar. Already on that final lap. ZenQ as well has just started it. FBev is running away a bit from Otterface. There's not going to be a move here. And my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm wondering whether Marky Marks actually pitted really early on. In fact, I think Marky Marks pitted on lap 1. Correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm very sorry for getting that wrong, because Marky Marks has pulled a bit of a blind as Vincent looks to the inside there for turn 1. And, well, Feel the Vibes just simply decides to take the race in line. He is not perturbed by the Dutch driver, but I think he's going to go for the move here into 3. This will be the place, if you're going to do it, you're going to send it. He doesn't go for it, though. Again, he's making those snap moves to the inside to intimidate a move, but then he's simply backing out of it at the last moment because he's trying to put his opponent off, and Vibes is just not facing it. He's saying to it, you know, you're not going to put me off. And in fact, Vincent has dropped a lot of time coming up into 5 there, and Vibes now has got himself a nice cushion for, I think, Vincent just getting a bit too aggressive on exit out of 4. But meanwhile, further down, we can see Peachy not closing up to these two, so those are the closest ones on track. And Robert right now in P2, he is closing, we should point out, to Pies, but Pies has got a comfortable 2.2 second lead over Robert. So in Pies' shoes right now, all he'll want to do is simply back it off to about 95% and just keep calm, because he doesn't need to rush this one home anymore. He can take his time. He's got the gap to play with. But your closest drivers on track are P7 and P8 in the form of Vibes and Vincent. And really, the surprise here, I should say, as they're coming down, we can see in the front of your picture is Marky Marks, who's our surprise driver of the day. And meanwhile, Vibes is battling with Vincent. I think Vincent's going to have the drag race down into the high-speed chicane here, and now he is going to go for it. He snaps himself back onto the racing line, and I think he's just about held it on. Vibes had to curb some of his momentum because of Vincent cutting back onto that racing line, but it's worked out there for the Dutchman as Vibes loses the position. And we'll look to try and get it back potentially over the last sectors of the lap. But Pies right now in that commanding position. He's got 1.8 seconds over the German. And hold on a second, what has happened here to Robert? That's a disaster for Robert. And I think that's going to drop him down the field. He's having to wait until drivers clear him. So that means ZenQ is now up into P2 and FBev is up into P3. No! not the German. He was doing so well, and that means Dr. Otter faces up into a P4. He just got it wrong on exit out of 17, and what that means is that your race winner, ladies and gentlemen, by a country mile in this instance, is Pies from the United Kingdom with an 8.3 second win over Zenq Meister in P2. The Polish driver making a recovery all the way from the back to finish second. What a phenomenal drive from Zenq. And then in P3 is FBev, who's coming across the line. A surprise result there. P4 to Dr. Otterface and P5 for Robert, who's going to be screaming at himself for that one. And Marky Marks has held on to P6 with Vincent Summer coming home in P7 and Phil the Vibes in P8. And then we've got Peachy Erler in P9. And after these two, we've got a little way back to our P10 runner, the Portuguese driver of Gomez here, who is going to come across the line after picking up a penalty literally on the last corner of the last lap. He burns that penalty off, of course, before coming across the line. We couldn't do without a GT Sport penalty right at the end. And then the last of our running drivers, ladies and gentlemen, give him a cheer as he comes around the final corner and across the line. It is the Dutchman, of course, of Stanley, as he completes our race order for race 3 and spins it across. So there's your final standings, ladies and gentlemen, subject to stewards' inquiries. But your race winner, Pies from the United Kingdom. Well, what an absolute nail-biter for the end there. And I think Robert is the one who's going to be screaming the most in terms of their own personal mistakes. But I am hearing, ladies and gentlemen, that there may be an investigation after the race for the incident between what was, if I remember correctly, it was Marky Marks and Phil the Vibes. Actually, was it Phil the Vibes? Yes, it was Phil the Vibes. That incident, I think it was on lap number 5 coming out of turn 8 where Vibes was sent off into the gravel. There will be some questions about that. Of course, we're not going to give our perspective on that one. That's for the stewards to decide. But it did look as though there was contact between the drivers. So there may be some changes in the final standings here. But it has been a phenomenal end to the evening. The fastest lap there going to a 2:35.5. Goodness me. And now really, well, there's one other thing we can do after this one, and that is a little bit of King of the Karts. But the driver of the night, in terms of results, was Pies. A phenomenal set of wins, and really in that final race, Pies showing he just put enough pressure on FBev in order to be able to take the position out of FBev in the run down into turn 12 when he made his second move. As we're seeing people join and leave the lobby for the King of the Karts, of course. But really, it was FBev who lost out the most as Pies simply studied his opponent and got the move done. But Zenq as well, a huge amount of work put in by Zenq, and it paid off with a P2 right at the end of today's races. But that's the races for today. It is time for us to take a look then at King of the Karts. And of course, we take part in King of the Karts now because we've got the time available. So we're going to give it a shot. And we will also take a very quick sip of water, as has been requested by one of our viewers. And I'm not sure why the car's just come out of the circuit here, ladies and gentlemen. It's decided it's got a life of its own. And I'm not sure... Hold on a sec. Why can't I see the front of the car? This is distressing and concern. I think it's because... Okay, that's not good. That is not good. I can't actually see the car. Oh no, this is not good. Is there any way I can flip the camera around? So I think we might be able to fix this by spectating other drivers, and what we can do is switch to their onboard view and we will flick the camera forward. There we go, and I think that cures our problem. And Pies did not wait for us. That is very unfortunate. Well, so we will not be taking part in this one then. Actually, no, we are in it. We are in it. Well, I did ready up. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We are in it. We're starting P2. Doing this on a controller this time. So 1 lap of Saint-Croix. Getting a bit of a push here from the guys behind. Oh, steady on, lads. Going to stay with vibes for now, not going to do anything silly, he says. As we are pushed onto the gravel. Thank you, gents. Very kind of you. But we can catch up. What we need now is a distant toe off of somebody. There we go. So Jerry's going to pull us back into the race here. Right, vibes, let's work together here. Oh, it's the gradient change of the road. Camber change of the road caught us out. Sorry, folks. We're out of the standings for this one. That was unfortunate. Got it a little bit wrong there. We'll learn for next time. It's definitely easier to do it without the steering wheel, I must admit, but loses a bit of its sensitivity without the steering wheel. Well, Zenki on our inside, but he's taking the tight apex, which means he'll lose momentum initially. He's going to come back now with a huge amount of momentum. He hits the boost. There he goes. We're going downhill here, so we're going to hit the peak of our momentum. Now 1 corner coming up. Can we get a P6? Come on! Not going to do it. We can't quite do it. Oh, that was good fun. Oh, that was good fun. Well, that brings to the end then tonight's racing. It's been an absolute pleasure to bring this, as always, ladies and gentlemen. But with that... Well, with that, that is our proceedings for tonight. But of course, we do have plenty more racing for you tomorrow with EU Division 3 coming back to this circuit, and that will wrap up round 2 of season 35 as of tomorrow. But in the meantime, I wish you all the best. Thank you for tuning in. If you have enjoyed, be sure to let me know. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to subscribe as well to the Twitch channel. And until tomorrow evening at the same time, 1930 UTC or Greenwich Mean Time, it's going to be goodbye for me. Stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and remember, as always, to stay on track.